The regular meeting of the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee will now begin.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Strand. I'm the chair of the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum, this being the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee meeting of Friday, April 29, 2022. It's 8:04 a.m. and this is our regular meeting number 5.
Thor Adam.
Present.
Zachariah Aiden. Jonathan On.
Present.
Jocelyn Beard.
Present.
John Bernstein.
Here.
James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Present.
Amity Foster.
Here.
Mon Gallagher. William Graves. Heike Mudstad.
Here.
Husted.
Here.
Jones. Here. Richard LaRoe.
Here.
Motter.
Here.
Dan McConnell.
Here.
Dave McCormick.
Here. Dan Miller's here.
George Montague. Schumann. Chair Jeff Strand.
Present.
Stratton.
Present.
Beth Toso.
Present.
Vaughn.
Present.
Being present.
Is the clerk muted?
There are 18 present.
18 present. Okay, there's a quorum present. So thank you. With that, we'll proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access on the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. And so we have the agenda for today, where we've done the welcome and roll call. We will next move to a motion to adopt the agenda and accept the minutes of April 27, 2022. We'll then have capital budget request question and answer session for public works paving, bicycle pedestrian program, sidewalks, bridges. Approximately 10 a.m. we'll have a short break and then we'll do task force breakout sessions, which I anticipate will be largely the transportation task force, the bulk of the projects today. And so, again, just simple reminders. We all have our personal phones, I'm sure, at the ready. So let's try to mute when we're not in the speaker stack speaking. If you need to step away momentarily, we're all adults and we'll manage that ourselves. And questions, just try to use the function of the hand raise. We'll have the speaker stack queue that's easily identified for the chair. And if coming out of 11 days from total knee replacement, I will need to step away to do my walking regularly. So if that occurs and Vice Chair Bridges isn't here, I'll probably call upon Task Force Chair Eric or John to manage the stack for a few minutes while I'm doing my required exercise in this 4-hour meeting. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and accept the April 27, 2022 minutes. When you're making a motion or seconding motion, please state your name so that the clerk may record that.
I'll make the
So moved.
motion. Eric Wan.
Second, Amity.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda and accept the minutes of April 27th. Is there any discussion or are there any amendments? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for adoption.
Thor Adam,
Aye.
Zachariah Aiden, Jonathan On,
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard,
Aye.
John Bernstein,
Aye.
Brown, Luke Cunningham,
Aye.
Amity Foster,
Aye.
Iga Mudstad,
Aye.
Hustad,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Richard Laurel,
Aye.
Otter,
Aye.
Brad McConnell,
Aye.
Mick,
Aye.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
George Montague, Todd Schumann, Chair Jeff Strand,
I vote aye.
Trina Stratton,
Aye.
Rick Wan,
Beth Toso votes aye. Sorry, I must be having some audio issues.
Eric Wan. 17 ayes.
With that, the motion is adopted. So I think we're ready to move into the capital budget request Q&A session. And unless we have any, before we get going, if the task force chair, vice chairs have any comments to preface the work that will follow the presentation Q&A on CBRs. John, Eric, Jocelyn, or Katie?
This is John.
If not,
I have nothing to add at this point.
thank you. I think then if Public Works is ready, we'll segue to the meeting room and probably have screen sharing and presentation so we can proceed with Public Works unless Finance and Property Services has any additional introductions. No, I think we should go for it. Okay, we'll move along. I see Eric must have got bumped out of the meeting, so he's waiting. So just a quick aside before we move into Public Works Q&A. People have probably seen in the news report, Star Tribune reported the uptick in COVID. And so for our return to in-person meetings, Wednesday, May 4th, let's all be cognizant of the public health recommendations. And I will personally be wearing a mask at the meeting. Whether or not it's obligatory, I will try to respect public health and safety of my peers on the CLIC committee and staff. So let's please be cognizant of COVID as we're not out of the woods quite yet. With that, we can go to Public Works.
Morning, Chair. Just want to touch base with Neil here as well, who's been helping us coordinate and finance with a lot of the members of CLIC. Obviously, we're here for question and answer session today, so We've prepared a lot of presentations, as you've seen, a lot of capital budget requests. So we see this as your time to ask questions. We didn't have anything additional formally prepared today. Obviously, we're expecting you're ready for a lot of questions and a good dialogue this morning. So we're happy to open up the floor and see what Click members have to ask today. And thank you all for inviting us to attend.
We should do introductions.
Oh, yeah, we should. Good point. Introductions. I think many of you are familiar with me. I know I'm probably a little far away in the camera, but Nathan Coster, Transportation Planning Manager, overseeing CIP. So this should be my 6th CIP here with Transportation Planning and Public Works. And I'm gonna hand it over here to my left, but
Yeah.
possibly to your right.
Good morning. My name is Katie White. I'm a transportation planner in Public Works, Transportation Planning and Programming.
Morning, everyone. This is my second click, I think. My name is Trey Joyner. I'm a transportation planner in transportation planning and programming.
And good morning. My name is Bria Fast. I'm an associate transportation planner, Public Works and Transportation Planning and Programming. This is my very first CIP cycle and introduction to you all.
And we have one more person at home. Oscar, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I get to be missing out on the fun meeting room version of this. My name is Oscar Weber. I'm a engineering technician 3 in transportation planning and programming, and this is also my first CIP cycle.
And I believe we have additional one other person from engineering design. So Petru, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hi everybody. This is Petru Vizoli. I'm the project manager from that group, Public Works Bridge Group. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for the introductions. So then with that, we'll there's no further introductory remarks. We will go to the Click members' questions. So looks like we have 31 people in the meeting. And first up is Katie.
Hi, thank you. I had a question that was answered in the what do you call it, the Click inquiries page, but that actually had a follow-up one on the Nicollet at Lake Street project, PV 182. So it was mentioned that I had asked why the project only has $300,000 allocated to it. And so that was noted that that's in the assessments that are anticipated to support the network, and most of the funds for that project will be the value capture funds. And so I'm kind of curious, and maybe this is more for finance staff. I guess why those Nicollet Street Central streetcar funds aren't like visible in our budget. I guess in the documents that we see.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, so at least I didn't see that as maybe there's something I couldn't work with the department on, but I didn't see that submitted alongside with the other revenue sources. So I'm not quite sure, but I can work with the public works folks to figure that out for probably next year. But yeah, I don't have a great answer for you.
Next is Katrina.
Katie, thanks for the question. I think it's with us just working with finance, we'll iron that out and get that additional revenue source. One of the big things Click had asked for in the past is getting that budget request brought through this committee, so there's transparency in that project going forward. We have descriptions. Public Works and CPED kicked that off last year with City Council, and a lot of work is going to be actively starting with community engagement this year. And if you all are interested, I hope you track along and stay informed of a very, very important, long-standing project here at the city.
Awesome, thank you. I'm very excited for this project.
All right, next is Katrina Stratton.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my question. Actually, it's a comment. During the presentation, when you were talking about PV 177 at 38th in Chicago, and as far as community engagement, one of the things that I'm trying to be really sensitive about is how we refer to that intersection. And in the presentation, it was mentioned that George Floyd died, but trying to be a little bit more thoughtful and intentional. He was murdered, and we need to make sure that we don't disrespect what happened at that intersection. And as a white person, I'm trying to be even more cognizant. So the city, when you present these things, present them with the sensitivity and thoughtfulness that needs to happen in any project, in any situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Eric Wan and then Neil.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Hi, my question has to do with PV 122. That's the Dowling.
Hey, Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt, Eric. I think it sounds like staff were trying to answer the previous question. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Katrina's question. Thanks for the question, Katrina. As you know, we kicked off the project for 30th in Chicago this Saturday with an in-person open house. It was really well attended, something around 150 attendees. It was at Phelps Park. We also had a in-person virtual open house on Tuesday of this week, was also well attended. And it's really important, as you mentioned, to recognize how that vernacular is used in the community, how it's perceived in the community, and what and how we as staff kind of refer to the murder of George Floyd. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you for that.
Thanks. We'll, looks like we have a little time delay, so we'll slow down just a bit here and then we'll go to Eric and then Neil.
Okay, PV 122, the Dowling project. So they're scheduled from your funding table. They're scheduled to be $19,294,690 spent in 2023 with special assessments of 1.2 million. Could you explain what those special assessments are? Will those affect any of the neighbors in the Weber-Camden area? Is that where the assessments are going to go, or do you have any any hints on who's going to be paying that bill?
Thanks, Eric. Per the city's practice of special assessments, we're following the standard practice, so benefiting property owners adjacent to the work. So the street reconstruction assessments from Lindale to the site, as well as for the parkway, we will be applying special assessments to adjacent property owners. So the residents within the influence zone along those 2 blocks of Dowling will be assessed, as well as the existing businesses along what we call Lower Dowling, so east of Washington. But as a part of the leases and the purchase with UP and the developer, they will also be assessed as well to pay for the benefiting street improvements. So we are following our standard practice of doing assessments for the project.
So I'd like to highlight that you're targeting one of the poorest areas in Minneapolis for a special assessment. Is there a way to appeal to perhaps the city council, or how does one appeal to make sure that some of the most impoverished people in our city are not significantly and negatively impacted?
The city does have an appeals process for the special assessment. I wouldn't say it's targeting. I would say much like all the other street projects, whether it's resurfacing or reconstruction, they have corresponding special assessments that go with them per the benefit that we do with the project. So I wouldn't say that it's anything out of the norm that we have, but if there is the desire to appeal the assessments, there's pre-public hearings, there's a public hearing, and there's a process through city council which to do that, that the residents will have the opportunity to do.
Could we get a commitment that you'll advise those neighbors? A majority of them do not have any connection to the internet. So and that's just looking at regular reports of connectivity in that area. So I think it's going to take more of an outreach than sending out a posting on Facebook or sending emails out. And it's more than a note. I'd like to say we need a commitment that you'll do a special outreach to those people living along that corridor.
I can't commit beyond our staff, making sure they send letters, they notify the public hearing per law. But that's something I can take back to the team, given the concerns that you raised here today.
Great, thank you.
Neil is up next.
Yeah, so I'm just holding place for Scott. Scott?
Got Engel.
Thank you. Sorry, my hand raising feature doesn't work on this. So anyways, I'm asking about the PV 104, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the pedestrian ramps. In 2020, the city finally came up with their ADA transition plan, and then just this year in 2022, they updated it. But being on the click here, it looks like nothing's changed with this program. There's no urgency to sort of complete this project. Apparently, that document didn't sort of change the funding request at all. Looking back, it looked like it's always been $500,000, and it's planned to be $500,000 for the foreseeable future. In the transition plan, I think it's 28 years from now is when the city expects to finish these pedestrian ramps, which I feel like is a really long time in the future. And the other thing is, I feel like that $500,000 from 10 years ago to today doesn't buy as much. So I'm just wondering, like, does Public Works feel any urgency? This is rated relatively high in the priority list, but the dollar amount never seems to go up. Even when the ADA transition plan was completed. One last thing is, I watched when the ADA transition plan was presented to the City Council's Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and Council Member Johnson said he has actually submitted a request to the legislature for $6 million for pedestrian ramps this year as part of the legislative package. So it seems like the City Council has some sort of urgency. And when he talked about the $6 million, he talked about it as being just a fraction of what is needed. And so this $500,000, I get there's other needs in the city, but it just doesn't seem like it's getting us very far, very fast.
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's a great question. I think, there are several capital programs that are used to implement accessible infrastructure within the public right of way. So, in addition to PV 104, we have about 9 to 10 programs and or projects that are also working together to address accessibility needs in the city. And one thing, although, like you said, the funding for PV 104 has not necessarily changed, but something I would like to draw your attention to is PV 056, which is the asphalt resurfacing program. That was substantially changed this year. We reduced the annual mileage that program could cover from 30 miles to 15 miles per year. And that was specifically for the purpose of being able to address ADA upgrades for pedestrian curb ramps. So what that funding or what that decrease in mileage essentially did for the program, for 2023, for example, we are going to have an additional 400 roughly ADA compliant pedestrian curb ramps that are included with PV 056. That essentially goes to about 4.2 million additional funding in just 2023 alone to address the ADA pedestrian curb ramps as well.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I'm curious, can that be reflected somehow in the CBRs? That's the other thing I find kind of frustrating about these documents. It's just like, it's like a vague notion that, I don't know, it looked like the pedestrian or the ADA transition plan said it's going to be 28 years. But based on what you just said, it sounds like maybe that could be a little faster.
Hey Scott, Nathan here updating. Yeah, we did change the language and the funding in the CBR for PBO 5.6. And we were hoping today in the Q&A that we could help clarify that. We may have gotten the wrong map in there for the CBR because we had a map that showed when the ramps are getting updated with the resurfacing and not just the resurfacing work, because that is a critical and important update this year. That does reflect the multiple ADA transition plan updates that you did reference and highlights the city's priority to make those substantial investments and changes to make that progress. One other thing I'd like to highlight too is in 2021 and in 2022, Public Works worked with City Council to move an additional few $1 million to additionally accelerate ADA infrastructure. I believe it was in the neighborhood of like $2-ish million to get ahead for the 2022 resurfacing program. So this has been a really big focus area for us to really move the dial to all the points that you brought up. Two other things that you did highlight about state bonds. That is on the legislative agenda. We'll see how that work moves forward with the bonding package, if anything comes together at the state, but that was put as a high priority. So we had $5 million of a request to the state, and we also are working at the federal level on potential earmarks to further accelerate as well. But obviously those are caught up in legislative bodies outside of our purview, but we've made it very clear what our priorities are to advance accessible infrastructure in our right of way. So we agree with you, Scott.
Well, that's fantastic. And can you, I know these CBRs maybe get to be a lot of work and a lot of language, but that would be helpful to know that there's progress being made. Some of the stormwater folks, they give us that information in their CBRs, so you know that they're making the progress. So that would be helpful to know next year.
Thanks, Scott. I believe we did put it in the recorded presentation, but I know we're still working through all those interactions with Click. So we'll take that back and continue to try to highlight the good work we're doing. So thank you for the question. Hopefully it resonated today.
Thank you. Next in the speaker stack is Jonathan on, and then Katie, and then George.
Thank you. I have just a quick question on PV 158 on Hennepin Avenue. On the budget request description on the transportation section, there are a couple questions that ask you about the transitway improvements or the pedestrian improvements and bicycle improvements and the details, how the project anticipates that how the project will improve those. And I see some descriptions on the sidewalk and bicycle related improvements, but I don't really see any anticipated transit facility improvements in relation to this project. While the project description kind of talked a lot about how important Hennepin Avenue is for transit users, how it is identified as a transit priority corridor, but I don't really see any descriptions, the plan, what it includes to improve transit on this corridor. So if you any staff could provide more details on those anticipated transit facilities enhancements on this project itself, that'd be really helpful.
Thanks, Jonathan. Public Works obviously has a recommended design in the public right now, and it's working its way through that process before it goes to City Council. So we don't have any further updates on the design. As you likely know, that's working its way through the engagement process. So the CBR doesn't have any additional detail beyond what the project team would have.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think Jeff, you had said I was next, so I'll just go ahead and take over.
Yeah, Katie next.
Okay, I have I guess 3 questions. The first one is, given the infrastructure funding coming from the federal level, how is that being thought about, incorporated into budgets and planning on the capital side? So let's go one at a time.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you because that was a big that's a big question to begin with. Okay, so I know in the past when we've done these in person, we've done like a grounding of like transportation finance 101 of like municipal state funding and the like. And I think this is a good time to ask questions because there's a lot of misunderstandings or assumptions about what the IIJ is. So I think this is a great question because it was going to come up today. So the IIJA represents a reauthorization of the federal transportation bill, the FAST Act, but at an increased level. So I believe it's about 30% higher than the traditional federal bill. So for most instances, it is like the same process that the feds do to reauthorize funding that gets distributed to DOTs and MPOs across the country. It is bigger by about 30%, but it also does create new specific programs that this administration likes to highlight. What I will say is there's still a number of outstanding questions about how some of that would work and how that money's allocated. But what I will say, the things that we do know is that the federal portion that comes to Minnesota will be bigger and it will be allocated to MnDOT. And that portion that goes to MnDOT then gets allocated to MPOs. So it's pretty much very similar to previous years, but just a bigger pot of money. There is no direct allocation of federal dollars in this infrastructure bill that would go directly to the city of Minneapolis. What we do know and what we can go after is the regional solicitation. They haven't formally announced what the regional solicitation will mean as far as increased funding. This is the 2-year cycle which Met Council allocates federal funds, but we do anticipate that to be a lot higher. We know what the funding categories are. We know what we're competitive in. We know what's eligible. And this year through council, we did submit a much higher package to see what we might be able to go after. So that's the things we know and we have the most confidence in that we can go after. There's other bills coming, or there's other new funding discretionary packages for bridges, safe roads for all. There's a lot of mega grants for like big highway DOT specific projects, but there's expected to be others for stormwater, climate sustainability. So I would say there's a few targeted discretionary programs that will come out at the federal level that will be, Minneapolis will have to compete with jurisdictions across the country for much smaller pots of money that would help us advance our work. So it's a lot, and there's still a lot of information pouring out from both the feds and the state, but that's kind of the best we know. And we're trying to use our capital program to leverage as many of those federal dollars as possible. But right now, I would say the opportunities are still pretty limited, and we're doing the best we can.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And would those new discretionary pots that you were mentioning for bridges, stormwater or stormwater, climate, those types of things, would those also go through the normal regional solicitation? Is like that how Minneapolis, or no, it'd be separate.
So those are discretionary grants, and sorry if I'm good question to like pause because we use a lot of like terminology here that can go above people's heads, and that's a flaw we have. So discretionary programs are big grant open, like competitive programs that are opened either at a state or a federal level. And in this case, we're seeing a lot that are going to come out at the federal level. So Minneapolis will be going against the Seattles, the LAs, the New Yorks, like any other in between. And as you're kind of getting the picture, the DOTs, the MPOs, like the big groups they're getting direct money. Everyone else is kind of having to like fight over a lot of smaller pots of money, and they're going to be hyper competitive.
Okay, thank you. I guess so. A question that's related to that. When we have federal funds, there are deadlines on them, is my understanding, to be used. Can you describe how that works? Like, if there's a deadline, is that at the end of the calendar year? Does it depend on the funding pot? I've just heard that some of our projects can be at risk if we're not meeting our design timelines, and that can influence some of CLIC's recommendations, I think.
Yeah, so we already have a number of projects that have been awarded federal funding, and I think this group is aware. You'll see it in the budget request. We have 37th Ave Northeast, a joint project with Columbia Heights that's coming up that has federal funding in 23. We have Hennepin with federal funding in 24, and we have a number of non-motorized projects as well as partnership projects with Hennepin County that they are on timelines. I would say all of those, yes, all of those were awarded through the regional solicitation. Every 2 years, Met Council is tasked with taking federal funds and then competitively allocating them to local jurisdictions. And then they have a timeline at which the federal government says you have to spend this money, and they run on a fiscal calendar for the state. And the timeline at which the cities have to get authorization to use those funds and expend those funds have a number of rules, which I think would be very, very complicated to get through to talk through with this group. But what they do is if you do not meet that deadline, you can lose funding and then it goes to the next project, or you go to the end of the line, or the project is canceled. Those are things that we work with our partners at MnDOT and Met Council to keep the funding alive. But it's not like projects can just continue to have an earmark of funding for, years and decades at a time. The federal government, US DOT expects the projects on the timeline to be completed and then the money to be spent down and distributed to agencies to pay bills.
Are we good? Katie?
Sorry, I just one more question. So I think there was 2 out of my 3. The last one is on the Loring Greenway. I'm really excited to see a bike project. Actually, I think it's a PV project, but it's for the improving the path that's on Loring Greenway. And I think it's still indicating that, what is it, PCI, Pavement Condition Index, is being used for that. I know we've made comments in the past about pavement conditions, specifically on trails. I'm happy to see the Loring Greenway one, but I still am not seeing any projects on, especially on park property. And curious again about the relationship between MPRB, Public Works, because I know Public Works does a lot of the maintenance on those types of things. And so basically, there's bad condition in some of our park trails. Where is the gap, or, how can we make sure that that's getting done, or how is that being done to make sure our park trails are staying in good condition?
Thanks, Katie. So I'll go stepwise through the order in which you asked the question. So I met with the Loring Greenway Association last night, and it was good to hear and get a field walk and understand the inventory. We're starting from a place, but we know we have to collect a lot of information along the Greenway. And, working within the parameters of the CBR, we might have gotten PCI versus other asset condition ratings for the Greenway. It's just hard to fit in the box in CBR. We'll do better next year. We can figure that out. But a big thing that I wanted to highlight on the Loring Greenway having been built as a part of that Nickel Mall PV Plaza connection to our first city park at Loring. There's a lot of accessibility features that we know are likely to be out of date, with stairs and just the tactile strips for people with mobility devices or vision impaired. We know there's a lot of things that need to be inventoried. So we just wanted to get a good starting point. Comment taken, and we'll try to improve that CBR and work with finance to figure out a good way to get that in the form next year. As far as it relates to trails, I have a little bit of a 2-part answer. The city has a network of trails that we maintain as city trails. And this past year, in alignment with the goals identified by the Transportation Action Plan, we went out and did an inventory of the trails. So the city-owned trails, we have done an inventory of a number of those. In a second, I can have Oscar describe that if people are interested, but the park board maintains and inventories their network of parkway trails. There is some gray area between some systems where there's city trails that kind of go up to parks, and vice versa. There's parkway trails that kind of come up to city streets, but primarily it's different. It's a different relationship than the actual parkway streets themselves. The park board owns and maintains their trails. they own the streets, but the city is responsible for maintenance of the parkway streets themselves. Hopefully that clarifies. And if you need any other background on some of the trail inventory information that we have for our new BIC 24 program, we could answer that. But I think I kind of hit all your points.
Yes, thank you. I'd love to see that inventory information about the city trails at least.
Great. Okay, we have quite a stack that has grown. So I'm going to ask Neil, first of all, Neil, are you in queue for someone or you have a technical point?
No, I'm just in queue for Scott.
Oh, okay. So I'll put, I had George Montague who was in queue, then dropped off. So George was next on my list.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
After that, Mike Erlinson.
Sure. Thank you. And my question actually is a follow-up to the one previously raised by Scott regarding PV 104, because as I reviewed it, it did catch my eye that acknowledging we have 17,000 sidewalk corners, and PV 104 itself is addressing 50 corners a year. So that's I think it's more than the amount of time that Scott initially indicated. But acknowledging it makes reference to SWK01, and then BP004, and many others, I think also have funding for to improve ADA compliance. And I'm just wondering, it'd be really, I think it'd be really helpful for us to understand as we look across the many programs that do improve the city's compliance with the ADA standards and therefore the living standards of its residents. Is there any way to understand holistically as we look across the many capital projects, what is the plan to get ADA compliance as well as the timeline?
Yeah, thanks, George. Annually, as a part of the 20-year streets funding plan requirements, we do report back on our progress of our capital investments. Last year we did in July, and we expect to do it this year in July, where we track how many miles of street or ADA ramps that we do on an annual basis. So we will have that number ready shortly for what we completed in 2022. And as you can see with the number of increasing investments, that number for ADA ramps is going to go up substantially starting in 21 and 22 into the future, as well as the report backs we're required to do with the ADA transition plan. And I would say this has been a big focus point. As you can see, the money really talks on what we're trying to do in moving the needle there. And it's more than just one program, and we're trying to do that. And it's more than just us as like a city doing public infrastructure. It's also focusing on our utilities and our development and making sure everyone else who's disrupting the right of way is putting it back in an accessible fashion. So I would say at all levels, this has been a huge focus point in the last year for Public Works.
Yeah, no, and I agree and commend you for that. I just think this is a citizens group that's supposed to opine on the city's long-term capital budget. It's forward-looking budget. And I think it'd be helpful in order for us to do that, to understand holistically what is the plan, not individually. It's great, like this project has 50 corners and this project has X corners, and then after the fact, let us know what happened. I just think for planning purposes, it might be helpful to understand holistically what the plan is. So this might be more an observation than a question, but I think something to consider going forward.
All right. Then next, one of our newer members, Mike Erlinson. I hope you're going to be fully permanent approved here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. Just a follow-up, I think, a little bit to a question that Jonathan raised, if I'm remembering the names of people correctly, about 158, which is the Hennepin Avenue project. And maybe this isn't for this group, but I've looked at the information in your presentation, and I've looked at the link on the actual site for Hennepin Avenue. And to me, the thing there's a number of things that are missing, which includes a study of the impact of the traffic into the neighborhoods. And by full disclosure, I live in this area. I'm also on the board of the East Isles Neighborhood Association. And so you've got little information on taking out the parking and taking out the lane of traffic on how that will impact the neighborhood. And so I'd be curious when that sort of thing is done, in both as it relates to traffic and to parking, or if that's not part of the process. And also a study as to what improvement, if any, there is to the bus time running along a dedicated route. I've heard anywhere from 30 seconds to 90 seconds, and a $40 million project that's primarily driven by a busway seems to me should improve traffic or the ability to ride the bus downtown a lot faster than a minute or so going through what is a very busy area. And finally, this one, Sam, again, maybe this is a little bit of a different take on Katie's question about federal funding. To me, it looks like this project is primarily being driven or pushed along faster than maybe it's ready to be at this point in time because of the $7 million in federal funding that could expire at some point in time. That's coming, I believe, from Met Council. And so as much as we don't want to see federal funding not get used or leveraged for a project in our city, at the same time, I'd hate to see federal funding driving bad decisions being made or not a complete review of that, of the total impact on the local community there. So thank you very much. And again, I'm new to this group, as was pointed out by Jeff, and so I may be asking questions that are to the wrong group, but I'm interested in your take nonetheless. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I would say primarily those are project-related questions that I would direct you to the project team. We can bring them back and forward them along. But obviously, we're here to talk about the capital budget request at hand, and we'll make sure to get those to the project team. Thank you.
Good. Any follow-up, Mike?
Not at this time, but
Great.
to the degree that the project team can put that sort of data in, I think would be very helpful, because to me it seems it's a gaping hole on the real impacts. And I'm not anti the project from that perspective. I just think there's a lot of data that's missing.
Thank you. Next, go to Eric Wan and then Dan Miller.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to circle back a bit to what Katie was asking and connect you to a conversation that the CLIC Executive Committee has had with the mayor for a number of years, having to do with public engagement. The way that money flows down from the federal government through through MDOT and through the Met Council and other sources is that's the money coming down. But what they review is a list of priorities submitted by the city. And they're clearly looking for one of the major criterion is whether a project is shovel ready or not. So if your project is in the CLIC says, okay, we'll put this in 2027, it becomes a low priority for funding. So hold on to that thought. The question is, at what point do you include public engagement? Is it after you've already identified projects that you want to do and then you engage the public? Or do you do public engagement to help identify projects that the city might want to consider to submit for funding? Do you work with the public? It's sort of nominally, meaning after you've already made decisions, or do you actually get the public involved at the very beginning of the planning process? So that's my question.
Thanks, Eric. As it relates to the public engagement, the projects that we're submitting for funding applications that is solicited by Met Council for the federal funds, those are rooted in a lot of the community engagement that we've done to develop our plans, policies, whether it's feedback from the neighborhood, CLIC, and we're working years in advance to identify those projects. In a lot of cases, we are going out and doing community engagement before we submit the grants. So on the case of Hennepin, back in 2017, 2018, we were doing engagement advance. Like this year, Northside Greenway, there's many, many years of engagement. A lot of our projects, we're doing engagement before we're even going to council to get authority to submit applications. applications. And that's done through a public process by getting city council approval to submit the grants and having a local match before they go into the CIP. So we're working ahead and aligning all of those funding opportunities to help offset local funding needs in our capital program that are bringing millions of dollars of relief to the city's capital program and leveraging our dollars farther. So I would say that we are doing that community engagement, and a lot of those are reflected in our adopted plans and policies that we have here at the city.
But perhaps I can rephrase that. For example, if you did public engagement and the city said Hennepin is not a priority, we want to have Chicago as being a higher priority. Is there a way for that type of input to occur, or have you already decided that Hennepin is a priority over other project areas?
When we look at the universe of projects, and I'm sure this might be a theme in other aspects of the city, we are tasked with looking at many metrics of maintaining our right of way. It is age and condition to make sure like we're maintaining streets in good condition. A lot of focus is also on safety, accessibility. We have to look at all those metrics and making our data-driven priorities and also weighing that against community feedback. We know that Hennepin is really old. We know that other streets are really old. We know other streets have higher proportion of crashes that are impacting our Black and Indigenous populations. Like, we're using that information to inform what the priorities are. And in some cases, we have very old or infrastructure that's just not working for everyone, that we have to continue to elevate those as priorities.
Okay, I see a lot of people in queue here. We can follow up later. Thank you.
Okay. Dan Miller is up next.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to ask, or perhaps offer a comment about rescoping or scoping projects and sort of project creep. And can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've been having some problems with Teams. So I represent Ward 1 on Click, and we've had some projects rescoped and dropped this year that were actually in Click comments to the mayor last year about concerns. And I just wanted to comment briefly on them. One is what was PB 137, 29th Avenue Northeast, which was rescoped to the asphalt repaving project. You may recall this project was first brought to Click in 2017 and has been in every Click, has been a capital budget request through last year. And as Eric might point out, this project has been in community discussion about something since well before 2008. And since in 2008, they actually created a master plan for 29th Avenue. And the last couple of years, they've been busily involved with preparing for this reconstruction and what that streetscape might look like. So it was with great disappointment to hear this street rescoped, or let's put it bluntly, downgrading to an asphalt repaving that sometime is going to happen in 2026 to 28, which isn't a given. And I guess I'd just like to ask, is there a possibility of rescoping this thing the other way to see that happen? So I'll just offer two other projects. 2 years ago, the project PB 157 33rd Avenue Northeast was brought before Click, and it was here last year. And we received public comments about this project having been part of the concrete rehabilitation program that went through that area in 2016. And they deemed this stretch, they deemed this street too bad, too worse to do a concrete rehabilitation, would have to come back and become a reconstruction. So it's in one place, this is talked about in your presentations as being part of a future concrete rehabilitation project, but it's not showing up on your maps in the concrete rehabilitation project program. So again, here are two projects that are to the public, it's a real pain, or it's hurtful to wait your turn patiently to see these things happen, and then to just have them disappear. One other project that's very important is kind of mission creep is BP 006. It's a trail gap on 18th Avenue. It's an important gap between Marshall Street, the East Bank Trail, and the Great Northern Greenway. And about 2 blocks. That's been in the works since, I believe, 2018, and it was scheduled for 2023 construction. And now that has been moved back a year. And I hope that doesn't wind up in the dustbin as these other 2 projects have. We've had mission creep on the Queen Bike Boulevard on the north side, and hopefully it can get done this year. And just a comment that I've had regarding the Midtown Greenway and these other projects that are scheduled towards the end of the year. Well, the Midtown Greenway is a good example of something that really went bad, and I'm hoping that we can think about some of these projects coming back and rescoped, and the bike projects particularly getting the attention that they deserve at the front end of the season rather than at the end. Thank you.
Public Works response?
Thanks, Dan. I guess I'll try to start with BP 006. I think there's a more direct answer there. Obviously, we don't have right of way there. We are working with an active rail line. So some of the aspects of that project are a little out of our hands. Working with railroads requires some delicacy, and trying to make sure we have a successful project that aligns with their right of way and how we're working your railroad tracks, but also designing trails that maintain the appropriate distance and elements of a safe facility. So some of that is out of our hands, and it hasn't gone as quickly as we would have liked. And it's very hard to rush negotiations. So I would say it's not in a dustbin. It's just working with a project partner. So that's just one thing that I would just say it's a little out of our control, but we're trying our best.
Thank you for that. I understand how difficult that is. And as I'm sure you're well aware, that across the river on the north side, we have the trail gap between Ole Olson and 26th going in. And it certainly would be terrific to have these 2 projects come together at that bridge in 2023. I wish we could have started those conversations with the railroad a little sooner. They're ongoing with the park board on the other side, and that's terrific. And thank you for keeping us in mind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. So next is Scott Engel, I believe. Neil is in queue for Scott Engel.
Correct. I was, I'm very supportive of the Vision Zero program, BP1, and it's the #1 priority in this list. Though the dollar amount seems really low, $500,000. Is this enough to get to 0 deaths? I think last year we're actually going in the wrong direction for deaths on our roads in the city. So I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that once again, it's the same dollar amount every year. My understanding is that inflation, construction inflation especially, is going up. That, I don't know, even if you bumped it up 25,000 a year or something, I don't know, something. This just doesn't seem like a lot of money to accomplish the goal of 0 deaths by, it's within our purview of 2027. So.
Scott, thanks for the question. And obviously there's a lot of perspectives we're taking on this from an infrastructure perspective. This program is more trying to do the quick, rapid builds. Obviously, we're aggressively attacking a lot of the reconstructs, both with the city, and we've been pushing the county on a lot of their streets. You've just seen a lot of 4 to 3s that we've been working with them on. Our pedestrian safety program, our traffic program is aggressively taking on those major intersections. So this is more of that quick build approach to it. And one thing that will help inform to that question exactly that you're asking, is that the right amount? We're updating our 3-year action plan right now. So as you all know, Ethan, or many of you know, Ethan Foley is our Vision Zero coordinator. He's getting actively started to update the next 3-year action plan. The previous one was 2019 through 2022, I believe, or 2020 through 2022, and the next one will be 23 through 25. So we're actively doing that, getting more crash information and trying our best to pursue as many funds to make physical permanent improvements, because we know that the striping and sticks can change so much behavior, but physical infrastructure is what's going to be key. And Scott, I would say we are trying to root that lens in everything. And yes, that has made some challenging trade-offs in the CIP, which Dan highlighted, but focusing on those Vision Zero corridors where people's lives are changed through severe and fatal crashes and updating that infrastructure and taking a data-driven approach and putting that lens on our work has been very critical. And the work that we're doing and pushing the county and MnDOT to do that as well, hopefully we can start to see that in the coming years as those plans are coming to fruition. One other thing as it relates to the federal infrastructure bill, we are keeping a very close eye on safe streets for all and seeing what we might be able to do to bring in additional funds that's very specific to Vision Zero as it's been written by the feds. So like, it's a very multi-pronged approach. And, you know, one thing also we're being mindful of is, you know, there's many aspects that are out of our control as far as like enforcement or other things, but we're trying to control what we can control with infrastructure and public works. And, you know, Scott, it's a great question. Hopefully with our updated policy documents, we can take that and figure out if the right number, if we have the right number. But I think across the CIP, between all of our programs, we are trying to move all in the same direction to address as many of those hotspot crash locations as we can.
That's fantastic. Can you address the idea of the construction inflation? It's something I noticed. Some projects seem to, over the CIP, do increase over time per year, and then others like this one remain a constant.
Some of it isn't inflation driven, Scott. Some of it is related to some of the estimates that we do have for expected work. Obviously, you know, inflation is probably something that this group in the breakout session you're going to talk with a lot. And I think also, like, just as public works, it's been a very unknown topic of like what inflation is going to look like. So I think it was too speculative to us as we were trying to put together budgets this year to try to move things around that would have resulted in other projects being rescoped or canceled. And as you guys know from the last 2 years, it's been very tough to make difficult decisions on what is or is not going to get funded. And that was just something that I think was too complex for us to try to have any confidence saying what inflation was going to look like. So I would say it's more directly associated with the budgets and estimates that we have, best to our knowledge of those projects and why the numbers are moving.
Thank you.
Very good. Looks like I am next in queue. So 2 points. And I hope this isn't redundant for Nathan or perhaps Mr. Weber, but could you provide a succinct overview for, in my 25 years approximately on the CLIC committee, I tend to prefer programmatic approaches rather than one-off. And so looking at things like the PV 131 residential neighborhood reconstruction program, or PV 108 concrete streets rehab, or the PV 56 asphalt pavement resurfacing, where we as a city have, you know, it's a 697 miles, 155 miles of concrete streets, 740 miles of asphalt. So looking at things that are constructed over 50 years ago or over 30 years ago or between 1961 and 76. And as someone over 50, I know how time has taken a toll on my physical body. And so our streets are probably not dissimilar. So I'd like to just hear again, and maybe for new members' benefit, the distinction and kind of bifurcation from programmatic projects that are in the programs versus individual project. And that's my main point. And then secondly, I'd like to just go on record agreeing with Dan Miller's comments about the 29th Avenue Northeast and other projects that seem to be waiting in queue, since we do look at trying to ensure maintenance of the city's infrastructure and equitable delivery of services. CLIC has equity criteria added to our scoring criteria. And yet we do also have an overarching goal of making sure that the entire city, that our entire infrastructure system is properly maintained and that we reinvest appropriate funds so that we don't build ourselves into infrastructure gaps as we've experienced multiple times in the past. And then with that, I'll ask that Task Force Chair Eric Wan maybe take the cue. I have to do some steps. And after me, it's John Bernstein and Rich LaRue.
Thanks, Jeff. So the difference between programs and projects, good question, especially for new members. Projects represent typically reconstructions or one-off specific scopes that are one-time in nature, typically of reconstructions, whereas programs are recurring activities. You have them in traffic, you have them in bridge, you have them in non-motorized and street. So that's typically how we're allocating that. And I would just say one comment. Jeff put out a lot of stats. We have 1,000 miles of streets. We cannot afford to reconstruct everything and wait to put everything into reconstruct. We're talking billions with a B. And what the city's has to do using a data-driven approach, and we do have to make tough decisions as staff, but trying to look at the whole city, is making sure we're not waiting for the reconstruct. If we're not able to get it, how do we maintain the city and maintain it with accessible infrastructure, looking at what we're trying to achieve. And we can't get to every reconstruct, and we can't wait to get to every reconstruct. So we do have to often make hard decisions of like how we continue to maintain our assets over time using resurfacing, renovation, and reconstruction. And we know that's not easy. We have people representing wards in various neighborhoods, and they feel very passionately about their wards and neighborhoods. And a lot of the streets have personal connections. But what we're trying to do is take the city lens of trying to maintain that infrastructure citywide. And I know that is challenging, but we're trying to do our best of allocating those dollars within the budget we have to try to continue to, maintain those systems and find that balance between what we can reconstruct and what we can preserve a little bit longer. So thanks, Jeff. Hopefully you get some steps.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to continue with Rich, and then we'll get to John Bernstein. Rich LaRue.
Hi, this is a question that I think you've touched on in various aspects, but I don't have a particular connection to any specific project or program, et cetera. I'd like to just sort of look at everything and try to understand what collectively is needed and what should be ranked higher or lower. I'm asking about I think the street projects collectively use 60 separate projects or 60 separate proposals, and they're all ranked 10 of 60 or 50 of 60. Are those numbers sort of carefully selected? Are they sort of put in at the last minute, or are they old? How well might I look at those projects and rankings and judge them for myself? From what I would consider the experts.
Thanks, Rich. I'll take this question. This is Trey here. So those numbers are really reflective of where the project kind of sits in the CIP. Most times projects that are sooner in the CIP programs get higher ranking numbers because they're have dedicated funding across multiple years of CIP. Reconstruction projects kind of fluctuate, but I would take, just look at those numbers and also compare them across of, which projects where projects are sitting in the CIP to really understand the scope of, the priority of those projects. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, John Bernstein, and then I'll put myself into queue. John?
Thank you. So I have questions on 3 different projects, so I'll take them one at a time. None of them should be, I think they're all pretty simple questions and hopefully answers as well. The first is on BR 101. I see Van White Memorial Bridge is slated in 2027, and I'm a little surprised to see that bridge in there. Unless I'm remembering this incorrectly, that's a fairly new bridge, less than 10 years old. So I'm curious as to why that's, what needs to be done and why that's showing up already, unless my facts are incorrect.
Petri, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, this is Petr from the Bridge Group. I don't have an answer right now regarding this, but I will write it down and get back to you. But based on what I know, yes, you're right. This bridge is it's a new bridge and probably shouldn't be on that list. Gonna review and we'll get back to you and answer.
Thank you. I mean, if there's something that legitimately needs to be done, that I'm certainly not opposed to that. But I guess if that's the case, I'd be a little disappointed to hear that such a new bridge is already needing work. And I'd be curious to know, what happened, if there was a mistake made during construction or what. Thank you. So the next one, this is PV 182. Following on, Katie had asked about this earlier. So I apologize if I missed part of the answer on this. I see in the SharePoint that, so just to keep people up to date on this, is the Nicollet Avenue reopening. It's requesting $300,000, which is clearly a tiny fraction of what's actually going to get spent there. They're reconstructing a bridge and reconstructing 2/10 of a mile of street. You guys need to show us all the funding. We need to be able to see that. We need that context. Doesn't matter whether it's net debt bonds or not. That's always the way this has worked. Yes, we're only specifically approving net debt bonds, but a huge part of what we're doing is seeing the context around that with all the other levels of funding. So I don't know whether that's a request that's for Public Works or for Finance or both, but I'll just put that out there. I don't feel good about rating that project today or individually in the near term without having all of that information. I'll stop.
John,
Yeah.
I'll just answer that quickly. I think that was just a misstep by us here in Public Works. We can work with Neil to get you the information, but yes, the 300,000 is for assessments. It's our standard process when we do street improvement projects. So we'll do the assessments, and that's why we put that in the CIP. But we did miss the fund, like the revenue source, because it is unique compared to OpenGov. It's very unique funding source that isn't traditionally in there. So just an oversight, we can work with Neil to provide that. And obviously any number we throw out there right now is very preliminary since we just started engagement in some preliminary planning engineering. So thank you for that comment, and we'll update it as we continue to go in future click submittals.
Thank you. Does anybody there know just ballpark what that project total is looking like?
Whatever I say I know is going to be wrong. I just don't know how many zeros I'm going to be off by. But what I can tell this group is we're going to build a street from Lake to approximately 29 Cecil Newman. There will be a bridge. There will be bike accommodations. There will be sidewalks. There will be green infrastructure, stormwater, public utilities. But that can vary very widely as we learn through the Upper Harbor project of what we ultimately decide to do. So that's what I can tell you right now, but we're going to work diligently with the community starting this summer to figure out what it's going to look like.
I mean, without knowing a lot, what you just sounded, that sounds like north of 20 million to me. Is that fair?
I honestly don't know, and I don't know what the estimate's going to be. I think it'll be more than $10 million. That's easy, but I don't know how high it's going to be, and I don't want to have a number stuck to me this early in the project.
Thank you. Last one is PV 181. This is probably more of a comment than anything else. That project strikes me as a project that is a no-brainer in terms of doing something that meaningfully does something around equity. And so I'm wondering why that's all the way out in 2028. It's not a huge project. It's $500,000 ask. That's the reconstruction of the streets near Hiawatha where the Indian housing is.
Thanks, John. Much like we do with a number of new capital budget proposals, or capital budget requests, they start in the out year, but given the opportunity to have this committee review it and rank it and bring that forward to both mayor and council, that's where we wanted to start it. The study, when the capital budget requests were due, we did not have the study complete with the community and all of our technical work. So we also didn't have a great estimate of what we thought the project budget would be. So just know that that will likely to change too. But we agree this is a very important project from an equity and advancing many goals as it relates to environmental justice, social justice, and safety, and across many swaths. So we hear you, and that's something that might change. And I would say this is a project that is a strong candidate for us to try to pursue many outside grants to fulfill the vision of both Public Works and the community.
So I just want to follow up. I appreciate you guys trying to use the capital planning system the way it's designed to be used, which is a new project goes in the very out year. And that's a fair response. Maybe in the future with a project like this, you can say, listen, we're putting this in the out year, but if you guys see fit, you know, I think this is one that the committee should seriously consider recommending that we move up as long as there's no timing issues from your perspective in terms of getting all the community. It sounds like community input's already underway. That started last year.
Yep, and in some projects is we want to move at the pace of trust with the neighborhood, and we'll learn what that looks like as we wrap up this up and find out what other funding is available through CLIC and mayor markup, as well as like grant opportunities. But absolutely hear you, John. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. So I see no others in queue, so I will go at this point. First, connecting to what John just spoke about regarding public input, the Upper Harbor Terminal is a good example of something that you might want to study. Public input had been solicited for almost 14 years, yet it was not effectively communicated because there seemed to be a flurry of activity after 13 years of collecting data. What I would suggest is that a public engagement plan be published in advance so that you don't have a trickle in of comments over basically what will be a 15-year period if you really want their project to move forward. Okay, so I'll just put that aside for a second. For the past few years, we've placed a comment regarding our request to see the inventory of projects covering the next 30 years. We know that there's a useful life for most infrastructure, and I think you've hinted that you do have such a list. And the mayor committed to checking on whether we can gain access to that list of projects. One of the things we don't want to do is be surprised when a slew of projects become due in, let's say, 10 years, when we're not planning for that little bubble of infrastructure replacement projects. So if you could read that comment again from last year, the year before, and the year before, we really would appreciate seeing that list of that inventory of projects for the next 30 years. It sounds like a long time, but it's not in infrastructure years, as you know. It's not like dog years. So with that, I don't see any other comments. Last call. Anyone
Thanks, Eric.
with questions?
Thanks,
If not,
Eric, for
we'll
sharing while I was doing my walking.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's see if there are any additional questions. It's only 9:22, so could be unprecedented if we, as CLIC, finish this quickly. I see Robert.
I see Dan Miller's hand up.
Okay, very good. Dan Miller.
We have a Can we have a question, Jeff? Jeff?
Pardon?
We had a response to the last comment.
Let's hear that first, and then we'll go to Dan and then Amity.
We have a 6-year capital improvement plan. We do not have a 30-year capital improvement plan. We have a 10-year action plan that is more high level, but we have a specific 6-year capital improvement plan that we bring to this meeting. I just want to be clear, like a 30-year capital improvement program is not something that we have or plan to create. So I just want to clarify expectations for this group.
Right, if I might, Chair. So I don't think we're looking for a plan. We're looking for an inventory of capital investment needs that may emerge during the useful life of the infrastructure. So you may not have to respond. You may not have to have a plan to remedy the situation. We just like to see what the total cost might look like over the next 30 years.
It's not something we can prepare.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, point noted. Dan Miller.
Yes, I just wanted to compliment everybody for, I believe it's the first year that BIK 24 major trail maintenance is coming before Click. And I think that is a wonderful addition. Would love to hear a little bit about it. The program that was started last year with the Parks Board to address kind of trails that have are quickly, well, are going to be going, are bad or are going to go get bad is a great idea. So I just wanted to thank you. And if you had anything to offer to our group about it.
Yes. BIC 24 is a direct response to the Transportation Action Plan. They had a couple items that called for us to inspect and maintain trail and bike lane pavement conditions, as well as improving pavement condition on the AAA network. Last year there was a contract and we rated city trails over 10 feet wide. And we also extended a pilot study for how to rate trails less than 10 feet wide. The 10 feet comes from the equipment used to rate those trails. It's mounted on a pickup, so narrow trails just weren't going to be able to be rated in the same way that streets are. That condition was actually very good news for the system as a whole. Of the about 30 miles that we got rated, we were in the fair to good range as a whole system. And so starting with BIC 24 as a way to programmatically maintain trails, it'll help us prevent trails from decreasing in condition to such a place that they need to be reconstructed or need to have a more capital intensive reply.
And if I'm correct, that hasn't existed until now.
Correct. And so one of the reasons that it's not starting right away is so that we can have a couple of years to identify the trails where we're going to start, and so we can hone in on the appropriate level of funding for specific maintenance, and what types of maintenance are going to be the most useful to extending the life cycle of those trails.
Thank you.
Amity is next.
Cool, thank you. I have a question about PV 166, 2nd Street Northeast Broadway to Lowry. So in the 2022 to 2027 CBR, it had a start date of April 2026, and now it has a start date of April 2028. I'm just curious about why. Like why it's being pushed out.
We have a lot of competition for funding. Last year, we've extended to a 6-year CIP, and then we've also added a lot of projects in those 2 out years. So we're trying our best to provide click options, but we know there's limited funding. The other aspect is with 26 and 27, that is the next 2 years for the federal funding through Met Council or other grants. So we did move other projects in 26 and 27 that we submitted for regional solicitation, knowing that we might be able to bring in 7, 14, or even more millions of dollars to help advance those projects. So it's multifactorial on why projects are moving around, especially in those last 2 to 3 years. But I would say Second Street, we are very aware of some of the stormwater conditions and the flooding in there, especially near the intersection of 2nd and 13th. So we are starting to look at that one a little bit more closely, especially given some of the prominence of the rains that we've experienced and seeing what other options for moving that forward or working with our partners or finding outside grant funding might look like.
Great, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of small businesses and like they keep coming in at that intersection. So
yeah,
thanks for the answer.
Next up, John, and then Katie.
Thank you. I just want to circle back to Eric's request from a minute ago. Maybe there was some misunderstanding. I'd be shocked to learn that Public Works doesn't have some kind of an asset inventory that they either are working on or have that informs how you go about planning the 6-year capital improvement process each year. If that doesn't exist, that would imply to me that you're using a very reactive methodology instead of a proactive one, looking at what the assets are and what the age are, and at least trying to be aware of where problems may come up before they actually come up. So that's what Eric, I believe, is asking for. We've asked for that as a committee for several years. If it doesn't exist, then I'd like an answer as to why something like that doesn't exist. This may be above the pay grade of all of you guys who are there right now. So I'm not looking for a specific answer right now, but I'm asking for follow-up on that.
Hi, John. I think it might be misinterpreting how the question is asked. We have an inventory of streets, trails, like we have the inventory and we are running projections on like how to make capital investments. Maybe I was interpreting like, does that projection say, here's the specific 30 project or the next 30 years of all the detailed projects? Like that is a world of difference of workload and being able to be that finite to predict everything for the next 30 years. Like we don't have that, but we have software and inventory of our assets to help inform our 6-year program and start understanding our backlog of needs. We've updated that a couple of years ago and we updated it as we need it to keep rolling forward to update the 6-year program. But I think it might just be our interpretation of how that question was asked. But like we are using like collecting new information. Like we collected new PCI data last year for Port of the City. We're collecting it again this year. We've got the bike trails we're collecting inventory on. We're collecting inventory on ADA to inform the capital program. I think we might just be misinterpreting like what we're talking about.
I think that's right. Thank you. So we're asking for more than to hear that you're doing that. I don't think we need to see that at an incredibly granular level, but at a bigger, higher level, it would be helpful, I think, for us to see some kind of a report that's produced from that. Certainly anything about updates to PCI around the city would be very useful for us to see, especially since the Streets and Parks Ordinance was specifically trying to address that. So it would be very interesting to see that. And then on a broader scale, if there's, for lack of a better way to put it, if there's a pig in the python coming with respect to bridges or roads or anything else, that's useful context for us as well.
So some of those things might be new work plan items for Public Works that would have to be updated specifically. So I just want to like understand like running new projections for bridges or other things. And that's something we have to take back internally to understand if it's a new work plan request for public works staff to undertake. Because there are things that we do as a part of our work planning process, but we'll review that and see what we can get. What I would note is we do have a public webpage that we can share with you showing our plan for the PCI condition collection from last year and moving forward. And then we also have an open data portal that shows all of our pavement condition data that's available on open data on Minneapolis's website. So we do have data sources available to the public to review all that.
Thank you, and we can discuss this offline. We certainly, well, I'll speak for me. We certainly don't want to make a request that is requiring a bunch of work that's unreasonable. So, you know, we're happy to have a dialogue about that part of it.
Okay. Personal privilege. I will just say that I agree with John and Eric's concerns, and as the CLIC chair, I too have asked for asset inventories, for example, with public facilities more so, public buildings and grounds. And so speaking for myself, I'll say that we are certainly not trying to insert ourselves as the paid professional managers of the city administration or the elected officials and policymakers, but as taxpayer, ratepayer voters, we are definitely engaged on this committee and really want to be as well informed as we possibly can be to help with our advisory recommendations to the mayor and city council. Next is Katie.
Thank you. I have two questions. One to follow up on Dan's line of comments around BIK 24 and specifically the pavement condition index. So I was just reading more about it and note that like this CBR specifically references the ASTM D6433, which is all about pavement condition index for roads and parking lot surfaces. So just noting that, you know, bike trails and are used by different, you know, users, how are you taking that into account, given that that metric is for a different road user, or I guess surface user?
Yeah, I can respond to that. That first point. When we got the trail rated conditions, we got a pavement condition report, we got a smoothness condition report, and we also got an adjusted count basically of any dips that you would be feeling on a bicycle basically, or a electric scooter type of light transit. So we are currently in the process of trying to find a way to combine those ratings to give us a more accurate assessment of trails as opposed to roads. There's been a lot of work done for rating roads, and trail rating has sort of emerged onto the scene more recently, and so there's a less deep body of research into how trails get rated. We're still actively pursuing and listening to how other cities are trying to rate trails and how their maintenance plans extend the lives of those trails. And so it's not just new to us to be rating trails in this way. It is sort of a unique way to address infrastructure that's not designed for cars or heavy traffic.
Great. I'm really encouraged to hear that, you know, and would encourage Public Works to be innovative and, you know, to not wait for other cities to you know, come up with a metric that and to test things out. But I'm really happy to hear about the other, you know, the smoothness of the other pieces that you're taking into account, because it is just, it's a different feel and a different ride than in a car. My other question is, In general, this is probably to Nathan, what makes a project ripe or suitable or a good candidate for federal funding request?
Thanks, Katie. So I would say from the regional solicitation perspective is they have a lot of data-driven factors that drive eligibility. I'm seeing Amity nodding because I know she's on tab, but she probably knows this as well. But for like roadways, you have to be on the A minor functional classification system to be eligible, which is why there's only certain stretches of city streets that are eligible for that funding for roadways. Most of the county streets, I think, if not all of them in Minneapolis, are all A minor. So like the county has a lot much easier time pursuing grants for roads. For pedestrian, they have a lot of factors about volume and crashes and interactions, population density. Like they're very prescriptive to the regional solicitation. Bikeways, you have to be on certain bikeway type classification networks. In the region, they call them RVTNs, Regional Bikeway Transportation Networks. So we're looking ahead at our policies, plans, crashes, equity. We're looking at all this data and then seeing what would score high, because we don't want to submit loser applications. We want to submit, because it's a ton of work to submit those. For anyone who's seen them, they're like 100 pages. We're trying to screen out projects that, one, we can get funded in our CAP that have the local match component, would score well and hit many of the policies, and engagement that we've heard from the community where we can get those done. So I'd say those are like the grants that are typically in our wheelhouse. The other outside grants, it just varies. There's lots of random grants that come up through the national level that we just have to screen. They get forwarded us through elected officials or community saying, hey, let's pursue this, and we have to evaluate each of them independently. But I would say the regional solicitation is very prescriptive, and we have a very good understanding of what's eligible and what would make sense pursuing. Happy to send you all resources on that, but it gets in the deep, deep weeds of transportation policy.
Okay, Dan Miller next.
Yes, this was also another comment that was responded to last year that was submitted to Public Works, and we also made a comment in the Click report, and it regarded if Parkway paving is not necessarily the place to park at PV01, but it involves being able to get pedestrian facilities across, particularly North Minneapolis, to the across Theater Parkway and Victory Memorial Drive to the Grand Rounds. And there's some finger pointing on this, and inevitably it just dies because there isn't the weight of a program to put it underneath. And I studied this first of all for 26th Avenue, which is a crossing of a bikeway to the Theodore Worth Park, and through that just became profoundly aware of the difference of pedestrian signing, as pedestrian warning signing, as well as crosswalks that exist on West River Road and around the basically the south side of 394 compared to the north side. So I don't expect you to have an answer to that, but it's just a concern that I keep on seeing. Theodore Worth Parkway and Victory Memorial Drive often feel like they serve Robbinsdale and Golden Valley better than those neighborhoods to the east. And it would certainly be nice to sort of see some equity of pedestrian crossings and pedestrian crossings, zebra crossings to there. Thank you.
Dan, thanks for your question. I just want to highlight that our parkway system is really important to really improve it, the rideability, the driving surface of it across the city. As you know, we've had some real needs with the parkway system along Lake of the Isles, around other portions of the city in the northeast, and Stinson Parkway and St. Anthony Parkway. So when we're working with the park board to really address those condition needs and asset needs for the parkway, we really want to be sure that we can make those improvements, and also work with the park board and work with as we do site visits to really look at, if there are some needs or some points of coordination with our traffic and parking service department who do signage, who do the crosswalks, that we can probably implement those with the project. But otherwise, we're really just focusing on addressing those needs of the parkway system. As you know, it's important across the city.
Yeah, I realize that, and it's just something that slips through the cracks of how to get at that. And in the meantime, what happens is old crosswalks were there, continue to either disappear or they get repaved over, and so it all of a sudden disappears. And if there's anything about North Minneapolis being able to offer a more accessible and easy way to get to that trail system, it's an important deal to do. Thanks.
All right, click members, any other questions? Any members who haven't had a question yet? Want to make sure we get all the perspectives, and any members who haven't yet had a question or comment. It appears not at this point, so we'd spoken about a break time, natural break time about 10, so I know we have some staff announcements listed. Should we thank Public Works for being here for our question and answer session, and maybe go for about can we do a 5-minute recess?
That's what I was going to suggest, Chair Strand, and then we can come back and I get the brief staff announcement.
All right, so it is 9:45 according to my computer, and so 5-minute recess, resuming at 9:50. And thank you, Public Works staff, for taking time out of your Friday to be with the CLIC committee. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. 9:50, resuming our click meeting. We'll have some staff announcements.
Yeah, so I was gonna give a brief update here. So we're coming back into person starting next Wednesday. So in the Click SharePoint folder, I've put together like a one-pager on where we'll have parking. So we'll have parking vouchers and transit tokens available. So there's like a one-pager on just like where you can park. It's at the Hoff ramp. It's about a block and a half away from the public service building, and there's like a little map in there. So if you can look at that. We will also again have like parking vouchers available. So you'll have to get those at the meeting itself. And then, so yesterday, Amity, thank you for forwarding that, but the city has issued a mask recommendation. So we are recommending that our meetings as we come back into person that members wear masks. These are not mandated, but this is a recommendation from city staff. And additionally, as a reminder, all these meetings are open to the public. So if there are members of the public at the meetings, like just be aware that these are open to the public. And aside from that, I don't know if anyone has any questions about parking or transit or masks. We can, I think, start doing our task force work.
Any questions? I don't see any hands raised. Amity. And Dan.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question about the parking reimbursement versus transit vouchers. Does that mean people who use the parking ramps get cash?
No, there's like, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but there, so we literally just have like a parking voucher. So you'll come and then it's like a little, I think you just use it at the machine and you'll get voucher for it. And then for transit tokens, I literally went down to the Metro Transit stop yesterday and then our store, and they have like tokens that you can use.
Yep.
So those
Great.
are two options. Yeah.
Thanks.
Dan.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I just came back and I just have a question regarding the breakout rooms, and I didn't realize where you're at. So I'll just hold till you get to that level. Thanks.
All right. So is there any reimbursement, for example, if one were like a bicycle locker that charged, or any other secure storage? We heard about the secure storage at the municipal building yesterday, or not yesterday, the day before.
I guess at least for right now, this is the recommendations that we get from the clerk's office. So this is what we're offering at this moment. I don't know, we can have a conversation about the other stuff, but this is what we have at the moment.
Sounds good. Well, without further ado, then let's talk about the breakout room to make sure nobody gets lost in the Ethernet. So who is staying and who is going? Is transportation staying today?
I just have a question. This is Dan Miller regarding the breakout rooms that I know I've had my mute button on, and when we've gone to a breakout room, the whole screen just goes black. And sometimes I can hear, but there's nothing I can do. I'm just totally immobilized. I just wanted to ask if, and then I try to restart and I just can't get back into the meeting. Can I email Neil if I have issues? Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, Dan, and this offers for everyone. I'm on the transportation side, and Justin's on the other task force. But if you have any issues, like raising your hand or have a question to submit, just like email staff, and we can bring those questions to the chair.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's proceed then, Neil and Justin.
I think we have to finish reading up the script, so there's that last paragraph. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Perhaps the final reading. With that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting with the exception of the task force breakout rooms. Members of the transportation task force will remain in this meeting, and members of the human development task force should be automatically redirected to a breakout room on Teams. If you get disconnected, please rejoin the main meeting and staff will get you to the correct breakout. So I'll ask members and staff if there are any other matters to come before this meeting. Seeing none. If not, without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned at the conclusion of the task force breakout rooms, and then the next CLIC meeting will be Wednesday, May 4th, 2022, 12 noon in person. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Chair Strand. As you mentioned, Human Development is going to the breakout room. This will be our last attempt at doing this. If you see a button to rejoin the room, that's going to send you back to the main room. So if you're in Human Development and you move over, please don't hit that button. If you have technical issues, if that black screen, mute, give it a minute. If it still doesn't work, then try to rejoin the room or reconnect to this meeting. I'm going to pause in this room just for a little bit to make sure anybody who bounces back gets into the correct room, and then I'll join the Human Development Task Force. Thank you all for your flexibility and patience with this. We'll open the room and members of Human Development should transfer over there momentarily. It looks like that room is open. See, members have shifted over. I'm just going to give it a minute, John, and see if anyone bounces back, and then I'll jump over to the other room, but you're welcome to proceed with your task force.
Sounds good. Can you pull down the presentation screen?
Yes, sir.
So we'll just give it a minute, guys, to what's happening here. Out of curiosity, to Neil or Justin, are these task force meetings open to the public while we're online right now?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
And John, do we, just for kind of the mechanics of the rest of this morning, do you want me to just drive like we did last time where I pull up the CBR and then you'll keep track on your sheet and I'll keep track on my sheet?
That sounds fine. And then I was thinking today about how, are you keeping track of all of this? I am keeping track of it, and I thought I was the only one. If you are, great. If you're not, I got to figure out how to get this to you.
So I am keeping track of it. I think it's probably wise for us both to do it separately, and then if I can get it from you, just to make sure we're capturing the same information. So we can figure out some way to get that. I don't know if you have a scanner or something.
Right, we'll figure it out. All right, before we dive in, I'm just gonna give everybody a heads up. Hi, Jocelyn. You're doing what I did.
Maybe dropped out, huh? Dropped out and coming back.
Yeah, to me the other day, I hit that rejoin button and went into the HD meeting. So we have a couple of projects to revisit that we passed on last week. Traffic 10 and Traffic 22, and I've double checked that the links are now working properly and all the data is there. Hopefully people have remembered to go back and take a look. If not, here's your cue to go take a quick look at those two. And then also we deferred on off-street system parking systems PK004, and it looks to me like, at least in SharePoint, the parking people responded to some of Scott's questions about some more financial information. So when we get going here in a minute, I'd like to start by taking care of those three, and then we'll dive into the stuff that we just heard from today. So again, if you haven't had a chance to take a look in SharePoint, on the tab for this year, you can find some of the stuff about the parking finances, and then traffic 10 and traffic 22 are now, the information is all populated in those TBRs. Jeff, I just want to get your thought on this. Do we want to ask people who, at least it looks to me, who are not part of the task force to identify who they are, so we know and welcome anybody who's here from the
That's
public?
appropriate. Yes, I think that's appropriate.
Okay, so why don't we start with that? I see a couple of names on here there. Well, there's meeting guest, and I apologize if this is somebody who is on the task force who I haven't met yet. I see Jennifer Bloomquist.
Jennifer is a city staff member. I'm not sure if she has stepped away from her computer for a second.
Okay. Are you able to see anything more about who meeting guest is, or if that person can see participants and knows that's them? If you could identify yourself.
I see two people. I think one says Risa, so I'm guessing Risa Stead, and then Scott. I don't know if those are the two you're talking about, John.
I see one where the name is literally meeting guest, and I see Risa with guest after her name. That's different. This literally says meeting guest with no name.
I'm not seeing that person in my list. That's
Okay.
all.
It's showing up right between Katie and Risa on my screen.
I see it on mine too. Weird.
The joy
This
of
is
teams.
this is Thor. I'm not supposed to be here, but
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note that we are having people bounce out of the main meeting and come back, so I guess Neil, or someone, Neil may have to send people to the HD breakout if Neil can do that. I don't know that I can.
Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, Justin is
okay.
Moving back and forth, so I think it probably wise just we can start and then.
Well, Chair Bernstein, what you could do is you could have a roll call of the task force members. That would take, like 30 seconds to do, and we would then know who's all here to confirm our quorum.
Yeah, I think that's probably unnecessary. I mean, if you guys, there's a button on here that allows you to see the participants, which I'm using, and I can see everybody, and I recognize every single name with the exception of Justin. We verbally asked for identification, and either that person is not present at the moment, or it's some kind of a glitch, or they're not responding. So doing a roll call isn't going to change that. So I'll propose that we just dive in. So I'd like to start with, well, before we dive in, are there any questions or concerns that anybody would like to raise before we get rolling?
Is it possible to just do a very brief recap of what you did at last week's meeting? Just very brief.
I don't know how to do that briefly. There was a lot of projects.
Not that. So you reviewed projects, and was there any other information? I noticed there's some stuff on the SharePoint in the transportation folder. Were comments discussed, and is there a?
No.
Okay.
Comments will be next Wednesday. The only thing we did at that breakout, and now I'm remembering that you had some audio issues. All we did was go through and assign project priority and contribution to city goals. And if I could characterize it from a big picture perspective, for the most part, we stuck with previous year ratings. There were only about 4 projects that were new that we had to deal with. And we've got 3 projects that we passed on that I want to start with today because we were missing information last week.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Neil, and then Katie.
I was gonna say, just for Dan and any members who are looking through that transportation folder right now, we're city staff and the task force chairs are just exploring some ways of how we're gonna collaborate on comments. So that for at the moment is just a placeholder for what we'll likely use for developing comments for the task force.
Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, that was basically what I was going to say. So today, our task force is talking about the prioritization, project priority, and then I'm assuming we'll talk about or give a preview of how our task forces will be meeting going forward.
Yeah, well, we got a lot to get through first. We'll handle that first and see where we're at on the clock. So without further ado, let's dive into traffic 10 and traffic 22. So that's traffic management systems is traffic 10 and traffic 22 is traffic safety improvements. Those were rated significant and strong last year. For context, that's the way all of the traffic projects, there are only about 6 or 7 of them were rated last year. And that's the way we rated the other ones that we did deal with last week. So again, there's nothing sacred about that, but it's a point of reference. And so with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that traffic 10 and traffic 22 are significant strong.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, I'm going to do this vote the way we did last week. Instead of asking for the ayes on things that are likely unanimous or at least non-controversial, I'm going to ask you to use the raise your hand feature in Teams if you oppose the motion. Seeing none, this passes unanimously. All right, that takes us to off-street parking, which is PK004. That was rated important and moderate last year. And I'll entertain a motion on that one.
I'll move important moderate for that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on important and moderate for PK004?
I guess I find this to be one of the more frustrating CBRs. And, you know, there's a economic development case for these parking ramps and sort of a public service for the parking ramps, especially, you know, sort of for the city facilities. But I feel like they do such a bad job in recent years explaining during the pandemic whether they're being utilized. And I know there are a few of these facilities that actually lose money. And so, I don't know, I do feel like they in some ways work against the city's goal of encouraging people to take transit or bike when there's convenient parking, and, you know, in other ways they're hitting the economic development goals. So I don't know, I would put it into the desirable case, or that's how I'm going to rank it anyways. But
So I'm going to ask people to raise their hand if they'd like to be called on or if they'd like to speak. So we've got Katie. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, Scott, I mean, I'd say I'm in a similar boat in a number of ways. I will also point out, and I honestly, I laugh at this, that they put their level of need as critical. I mean, they're not a bridge. They're not in danger, like no one's life is in danger. And anyway, I think that helps to provide, that helps me take a step back in terms of like, yeah, how important is it? And with that lens, it kind of like that helps to balance it out for me in this like lower to middle important moderate category.
I'm going to put myself, I'm going to speak on this. You know, I think important and moderate is fine. I don't agree with the idea that the way to improve usage of transit is to make other forms inconvenient. I think the focus should be on making transit more convenient, not making it really hard to park. That has a lot of unintended consequences, I think, whether it's somebody like Jeff, who right now has some mobility issues, right? Because of his knee. Transit is a lot harder for somebody like him. And there's lots of examples like that. So, and the
So
other.
can I say one
No,
quick thing
Scott,
about that?
Scott,
So-
you can't interrupt me. You need to get in queue and then you can speak. The other thing I want to say, which I think is unique to this project, and there may not be a way to deal with it because it's too uncertain, but these projects can raise money for other things. So I don't know how you deal with that, right? Because you don't know how they're going to use the money. And just the fact that they can raise money for other projects doesn't mean we should necessarily rate it higher, but I just point that out because it's kind of an interesting aspect of this. All right, Scott, if you want to speak, can you?
I do not have a hand thing. I'm stuck in this stupid Teams thing that doesn't allow me to raise my hand.
Okay,
So-
thank you. I didn't know that. So, Jeff.
And I thought you had stopped talking. So
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just so Jeff is in queue. Let me recognize Jeff. Then I'll go to Scott. Neil just took his hand down, and then I see Amity. So Jeff, go ahead, and then we'll go to Scott.
Thanks, Chair. I will speak in favor of the important moderate. I personally feel that the off-street program serves a definite public need, and not only for what some people might want to call privileged suburban visitors to the city, but I think it's really important for our business infrastructure and our workforce. Prior to retiring, many of my coworkers were not able to, in their situations, use transit. I mean, a good share did. The enterprise supported transit use, but not everyone can or chooses to. There are lots of personal circumstances, and I think we multimodal system where we already favor, in the ranking, we favor transit. And so historically, I think there was a need that the private sector failed in terms of the parking infrastructure. And I believe that's why the city ended up investing in the system as well as the state. And, if that is changing and we want to, privatize this network and then get the city out of the business and let the private sector rule again. That's a decision for the policymakers, but I think we have this infrastructure, and I'm in support of funding it adequately so that we aren't underfunding a system in which we have invested and which we still have to maintain as long as we, the city, own it. So I think we're kind of striking a middle ground here. So I'm opposed to any further lessening of the scoring.
Scott, go ahead, then Amity.
yeah, I feel like I get pinholed into saying that all these ramps are terrible. I think it's fine that the city owns them, especially if they're well utilized. I think the question that I have, and it doesn't seem to get answered, is I have a general sense that there are very empty, giant buildings that that require a lot of maintenance, millions of dollars of maintenance, and especially during the pandemic, that they may or may not be losing tens of millions of dollars, and those dollars do go into the general fund. So the parking revenues go into the general fund. So that's my only point, is that, and we can, I don't think we need to belabor this. I'm never going to bring this up again. So I'm going to rate it low, but I think it's fine.
Go ahead, Amity.
Thank you. I was just going to say that if we're going to use other click members in our defense or lack of defense for projects, like we should actually ask those members how the project impacts them. So saying like Jeff is like, this project is necessary because Jeff can't use public transit because of his knee right now. Like, I'm actually really interested in Jeff's response to that.
So I'll let Jeff answer, but just to explain, Jeff and I have had conversations about this, so I get your point that I put words in his mouth, but I think I was safe doing that because he and I have discussed it, but I'll let Jeff speak.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, thanks through the chair. Yeah, I have had arthritis and knee spurs in my both knees for about a decade, and I've been getting regular injections for about 7 years. And finally, I was actually treating another orthopedic issue pre-COVID, and I had to just self-care that at home. But after 2 years, I did finally get scheduled for total knee replacement on April 18th. And so yeah, steps are an issue, and walking any great distance at this point. I do have a walker at home. I do have a cane that I use. It's probably going to be about a 6 week, I think 6 week total, to be back to the new normal. So if I were on a rail transit line, within outside of my house, like I am on a bus line that runs in front of my house, but I could probably more easily get onto the light rail. But outside of catching the line that runs on my house, I'd have to walk about 7 blocks to Osseo Road to catch BRT. So again, it's like a moderately short-term temporary disability. I actually cannot drive at this point, so I am not able to maneuver my driving foot. So that's my personal experience, and I don't mean to say that's everybody's situation. But I'm sure there are a myriad of people who have temporary disabilities as well as people who have long-term and permanent, if we call it disabilities or limitations on abilities or different abilities.
Let me just jump in quick and then I'll recognize Katie. So just 2 points. One, I could have made the same, I probably should have asked Jeff's permission before I used his name specifically like that. And I could have made the same point without using a specific person, right? Whether it's elderly or handicapped or temporarily handicapped, there's lots of different examples like that. So that was generally the point I was trying to make. And I didn't use Jeff with the intent of trying to make it any more dramatic or anything like that. It just popped into my head because he and I have had that conversation before. That's all that was intended by that. And then I just I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I think we should probably keep moving here. I have strong opinions about some of this stuff. Instead of going further with it here, I'd much rather discuss it with Amity and Katie and others and Scott over a beer at happy hour.
Great. I was just going to call the question. So
thank you. Perfect. All right. So the motion on the floor, just to remind everybody, is important and moderate. Oh, sorry, Amity, did you want to say something?
No, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Again, if you're opposed, please use the raise your hand feature. Scott?
Nay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anybody else want to use the raise their hand feature on this one? All right, so this one passes. All right, with that, let's dive into today's stuff. Well, we'll start with bike 28. Give everybody a minute to get there. This was rated significant and strong last year.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Second. Any discussion on significant and strong for bike 28? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. Seeing none, this passes unanimously. Let's go back to bike 24, which is the new major trail maintenance project. Thank you, Neil. If you can throw that one up, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Do you want me to read the project description out loud?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So bike 24, major trail maintenance. The project description: Minneapolis Public Works operates and maintains approximately 33 miles of off-street trails. In order to maintain and improve the condition of trails, the city annually performs a combination of spot and full surface maintenance activities. The objective of this program is to extend the life of the pavement, thus delaying the need for total reconstruction on the city's network of trails and off-street bikeways. This program will reduce annual maintenance expenditures by addressing failing pavement and potholes, while also improving the ride quality for people walking, rolling, and biking. The construction may also include replacement of some sections of curb, gutter, pavement striping, signage, and upgrading non-compliant curb ramps to meet current ADA design standards. And for the project cost breakdown, this is it begins in 2026 for $225,000, 225,000 in 2027, and $225,000 in 2028. And this is all backed by bonds.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have a motion?
Yeah, move significant strong.
Is there a second? Any discussion on significant strong for Bike 24? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to this motion. And that one passes unanimously at significant and strong. All right, now we'll start to accelerate things. So I'm going to take BP01 through BP07. That's 4 projects. That's Safe Routes to Schools, Pedestrian Safety Program, 18th Avenue Northeast Trail Gap, and Northside Greenway Phase 1. The motion, or excuse me, those 4 projects were all rated significant strong last year, and I'll entertain a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that motion? Looking at significant strong for those 4 projects. Jeffrey, you raising your hand?
I am.
Go ahead.
I just want us, if we're in the process, I just think we should kind of have a footnote for BP 006 that, you know, like parking lot footnote comment needed. It's not precisely related to this motion, but it's just if that's appropriate.
So what's, you're thinking we need a comment on that project regarding what?
Timing and connectivity to the Great Northern
Right, okay.
Greenway.
Can we vote first and then talk about that?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. So again, any discussion specifically on the motion? All right, seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. Seeing none, that motion passes. So to Jeff's point, what I would propose, if he's willing, is Dan raised the question about this in the meeting, so maybe he'd like to be the guy that at least heads up the team that does a comment on BP 006. I mean, I'm not sure, well, we can certainly do a comment. I recognize from past bike projects that we should be careful what we say in a public document about this, because the railroads will take every advantage they can to hijack the city and try to ask for way too much money for these pieces of land that the city tries to get back. So if we put comments saying this is crucially important, that's signals for the railroad that they can try to hold up the city and look, your own citizens say you should pay up for this in effect, right? So I would just say we should be cautious about the words we use so we don't weaken their bargaining position.
I can do that when it's appropriate, Jeff, or when it's appropriate, Jeff and John.
Thanks.
Sounds good. All right, let's take BP 008. That's the public space program. That was ranked important and little or no contribution last year. Sorry, that was, let me restate that. That was ranked important and moderate last year. And I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move that important moderate.
Second.
We got a second. Is there any discussion on important and moderate for BP 008? Neil, is that you? Who's talking?
I'm not talking.
I hear somebody talking, but I can barely hear them. Okay, maybe that was, all right. We've got Katie and Q and then Amity.
So I happened to talk with one of the public works staff more about these mobility hubs and got a better understanding of them compared to last year, and learned more about their importance regarding moving our transportation action plan forward and making active transportation more attractive and enticing, which was honestly one of the things that we're kind of talking about with regard to, oh goodness, I'm forgetting what project we were talking about at that point. I think the parking lots. Anyway, so I would prefer to see this as significant strong, because that is all in service to promoting, the transportation action plan's goals of, greater, changing our mobility or our mode share of biking, walking, and transit. So I'd like to see it as significant strong.
Let me recognize Amity, and then I'll circle back to Erica and ask if she considers that a friendly amendment. Go ahead, Amity.
I just have a process question about the transportation comment tracking. Should we be is someone updating that as we go? Or if we have a comment, should we be updating that in Teams?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I can do it up until like 10:45. I was just wondering.
Katie, would you be willing to do that, since you'll be here the whole meeting? And because I'm keeping track of the other stuff we're doing, so if you could do that, that would be helpful.
Which document? Happy to help, but
there's a spreadsheet in there that's a tracking thing that's sort of who's doing what comment we're doing and who's doing.
Okay, I will look for that.
I think when you go into 2022, it's the top one of the 3 that are there, if I remember right.
And the Transportation Task Force?
Yes.
Got it.
Erica, do you consider Katie's proposal a friendly amendment or not? I think you were the one who made the motion, right?
I was. I would take that friendly amendments. I'm trying to remember what our discussion last year was to make in favor of important moderate, but I'm willing to take that amendment.
Katie, I bet you can refresh people on that.
I could do my best. I think honestly, it was a newer project for all of us, and we were just thinking like, oh, these are like nice little doodads next to transit centers. That's my best recollection.
That sounds right to me. So I appreciate the additional information. So yeah, I'll take the friendly amendment for significant strong.
Right. So the revised amendment on the floor now is for significant moderate for BP 008. Amity, are you asking to be recognized again, or did you just not take your hand down? Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say about this before we vote? All right. Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to this motion. All right. That one passes. Let's do Vision Zero quick. That was rated critical strong last year. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on critical strong for the Vision Zero program?
I'll just speak quickly in favor of the fact that the Vision Zero program, as they were talking about earlier from Public Works, that these are quick implemented strategies to lower likely injury and death on our streets. And so I really like the program because it is like kind of a quick implementation type of thing.
Go ahead, Dan. Dan?
There we go. I'm on now. Yeah, I like this program as well, but I've got a few observations that are troubling. And one has been the rollout has been a little bit, it just hasn't rolled out again. And what was supposed to get done last year didn't get done. And as far as public input into this stuff, they recently put up something that would allow people to comment about what they were planning to do. So what I've seen, what they've said they were going to do was an array of stuff, but in some places, and I'm just going to use Monroe Street Northeast, all you see is bollard treatments that are on intersections. And there are a lot of other things that what they missed of all things was putting a crosswalk or a pedestrian signing at Logan Park, which just floored me. I looked into this and I was told, well, we don't do this and we do that. And I'm going, well, this is one place to do it. And yet they're doing the same thing down on 15th, which is the crosswalk to get to Indeed Brewing. And so I've been troubled by that. And the other thing I've been troubled with is okay, Monroe gets filled between Broadway and Lowry with these bollards. Who's taking care of them and how long are they supposed to last? And once they get, I mean, is it a 10-year program or is it a 1-year program? And one of the issues with this is that when you put these things in, Lindale Avenue North is a perfect place where they did a test of this, and everything got ripped up in the first 3 months because nobody was familiar with it. And so I'm just concerned that we're putting something up without a time date on the end or a way to maintain them. And that's it. Yeah.
Can I respond to Dan?
Yeah.
As a question. Is that something that we can get more clarification on? I'm actually really liking the click inquiries spreadsheet. So, I mean, you know, it had like Ethan been at the meeting today, like we could have maybe asked him some of those questions, like what are the maintenance, so then that can maybe inform a comment.
Yeah, I think we can put it in the form of a comment. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll start with the question. Let me stop you guys there for a minute. And this is important stuff. We should definitely be having this conversation, and this is going to generate comments, and this is really good. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and what I'm going to ask of everybody is that if the comment that you want to make doesn't directly impact how we're doing these ratings, I'm going to ask you to hold off, at least on a lot of detail. Maybe just say, hey, I have some issues with this. I want to, please put me down for a comment, and we can get into the detail that Dan and Katie are talking about right now on Wednesday. I think that would be a better time for that. Or if we finish quick enough today, we can circle back. But I'd like to try to at least get through these ratings first. So again, I don't want to railroad anybody. If you're making a comment that directly, you know, is trying to argue for changing the way we're doing these rankings, absolutely make that comment. If it's something else, if you could hold off until we get through these, I think that might be wise for now. Sound all right to everybody? Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, just as a note, I know you're asking people to raise their hands if they are objecting. Scott doesn't have the ability to raise his, because of the Teams functionality and his interface, so he can't raise his hand to object. So I just want to call that out.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I guess I didn't specifically say that with Scott, but my understanding is Scott will speak up and say he objects, as he did on PK004 if that's the case. Are we in agreement on that, Scott?
Scott, you're still on mute.
I can't see him step away, maybe.
Yes, sorry, I was on the other screen.
So, but did you hear what I just said?
I did, yep.
Okay, so that my understanding is that if you have an objection, you'll just go ahead and you can interject when you have that objection, so I know. All right. So the motion on the floor is for critical strong on Vision Zero program. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. All right. Let's take the two sidewalk projects together. That's SWK 001 and SWK 002, both rated critical and strong last year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The motion, excuse me, the motion on the floor is for critical and strong for the two sidewalk projects, 01 and 02. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if you object to this motion, please use the raise your hand feature. George, are you objecting, or are you asking to be recognized?
I asked him to be recognized.
Go ahead.
Okay, so per the comment I made in the other room, understanding the impact that this is going to have on improving ADA accessibility, I think would be helpful. As written, it's fairly general in terms of the improvements that are going to be made.
Yeah, so I think that's, I think you just volunteered for a comment, and I suspect that Scott would happily help you co-author that comment.
Okay, good. No, I thought that is great that you raised that point initially, Scott, and I fully support it.
So Katie, if you could note Scott and George to comment on that. Is that for both of those, or should we put that under zero, the defective hazardous, or sidewalk gaps, or both, or how do you want to do that?
I noted it on, I think it's SWK 001, because the ADA accessibility project makes reference to that.
Okay.
So it might be a combination of those two, and any others where you think that, because I noted a couple where there was reference to ADA accessibility, so it may be a more holistic comment.
All right. So Katie, if you could note that one under that project. All right. So back to the vote on this. If anybody objects to the motion, which is significant, sorry, critical, strong for both of these, please raise your hand. And seeing none, that passes. All right, let's dive into the paving projects. I'm going to take PV001. I'm going to skip over the alley renovation for a minute. I'm going to take PV056 and PV059, those three, 156 and 59, rated significant and strong last year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on significant and strong for paving projects 156 and 59? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. All right, let's take the two alley projects together. That's 6 and 63. So 6 is alley renovation and 63 is unpaved alley construction. They were both rated important and moderate last year.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion for important and moderate for the two alley projects, 6 and 63? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. All right, moving right along. Let's take PV74. That's the county and MnDOT cooperative projects rated significant and strong last year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on significant and strong for PV74? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. That passes. All right, let's jump to PV, well not jump, we'll move next to PV092. That's Technology Drive Northeast, rated important and moderate last year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on an important and moderate for PV092? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes. PV104 ADA ramp replacement program. rated critical and strong last year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on critical and strong for this one? We can attach the comment to this one as well. Seeing nobody is raising an issue. If you object to the motion of critical and strong for PV 104, please use the raise your hand feature. That passes unanimously. Let's take PV 108 through PV 122 next. That's Concrete Streets Rehab, 29th Street West Phase 2, and Dowling Avenue. All rated significant and strong last year.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to take a big chunk. PV 123 through PV 132. I'll read the titles. That's Logan Park Industrial, Bryan Avenue South from 50th to Lake, 37th Avenue Northeast, residential neighborhood reconstruction projects, and 1st Avenue South from Lake to Franklin. Those were all rated significant and strong last year. That's 5 projects.
Moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on those 5 projects rated significant and strong? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. All right, let's take PV 140 and PV 143 together. No, sorry, let's not do that. Let's do PV 140, 13th Avenue Northeast, rated significant and strong last year.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on significant and strong for 13th Avenue Northeast, PV 140? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, this is for a comment possibly. It's listed here as a CBR, but in the presentation on the concrete rehabilitation program, they had this thing listed as part of the concrete rehabilitation process in the future. So it's just a question to ask, which is which.
Okay. Dan, maybe you could put that in an email to Neil and he can forward it on to them. That would be for us to get clarified.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is significant, strong. I'll just say, let's go forward with rating this. If we get information from Public Works that suggests we should revisit this, we can do that at that time. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. Dan, for clarity, could you put your hand down? Thanks.
Yep. Trying to. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. All right, let's move to 143. This is North Industrial, rated significant and moderate last year.
What was that? Significant moderate, you said?
That's right.
I'd move that. Second.
Motion is for significant and moderate for PV 143 North Industrial. Is there any discussion on that one? Seeing none, if you object to the motion, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. All right, moving to PV 150. That's First Avenue North from 10th Street North to Washington Avenue. Rated important and moderate last year.
I would rate that significant.
Second.
All right, the motion on the floor is for significant and strong for PV 150. Is there any discussion? Is that not already underway?
No, but this is involved with Botno, and it's, I don't know, they're doing a bunch of stuff in this section that it's kind of, it's more than important, let's put it that way.
Do I have the wrong, pull the map down a little? Yeah, this is right in the heart of downtown.
Well, north end of North Loop, right?
The map doesn't seem to line up with.
The map isn't showing all of it. That
Right.
red line should extend all the way down to Washington. It's right through the heart of downtown. This goes right past Target Center, all that stuff. And there's construction going on there now. Maybe it's unrelated construction, but there's construction on First Avenue right now. I mean, it's clearly a major thoroughfare through the city, right? I mean, I certainly approve of significant strong. I don't know if anybody else wants to be recognized and comment on this.
PV 150?
Yes.
Oh, what does it say on our description? 8th Street North to 12th Street North. Oh, First Avenue North. Okay. I think we were looking, I thought we were saying 10th. First Avenue North. Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
you're right.
So this has changed. Neil, can you go?
Yeah, so you want me to just go to the top? Yeah, it looks like they did change the description of this.
So, yeah, all right. So this is the section, they've broken this up or done since, yeah. So what's happened is the part from 8th Street to Washington is underway. This part's not been done yet. I'm not sure who it is, but somebody's got a conversation going on in the background that's a little bit distracting. If you could mute yourself, it would be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully everybody's clear on this. This project was one project last year. It looks like they've broken out the part they're already doing. Last year, this was 10th Street North to Washington Avenue. Now this is 8th to 12th. And anecdotally, I just can tell you I've seen construction on First Avenue north of 8th Street, moving towards Washington. Any further discussion on this at significant strong? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. All right, I'm going to take a big chunk here I'm going to take a big chunk here. Let's just see what happens. PV 158 through PV 167, that's 7 projects. I'll read them off in order. 158 is Hennepin Avenue from Lake to Douglas. 160 is First Avenue South from Franklin to Grant. 161 is 3rd Street South from Hennepin to Norm McGrew Place. 163 is 31st Street East from Blaisdell to Bloomington. 165 is 35th Street from Nicollet Avenue to Chicago. 166 is 2nd Street Northeast from Broadway to Lowry. And 167 is Dowling Avenue North from Thomas to Lindale. Those were all rated significant strong last year, and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so that's 7 projects. I want to give everybody a minute to take a look at that in case anybody wants to break something out. Those were all rated that way last year. So is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to this motion. And that passes unanimously. Holy cow, we got a lot of paving projects. All right, we're gonna do another big chunk here. This is starting with PV 169 through PV 178. And again, I'll read the titles. 169 is 38th Street from Lindale Avenue to Park Avenue. 172 is Chicago Avenue from Lake Street to 38th Street. 174 is 36th Street from Nicollet Avenue to Chicago Avenue. 175 is 38th Street from Park Avenue to 23rd Avenue South. 177 is 38th Street East and Chicago Avenue. And 178 is Johnson Street Northeast at I-35W. And those were all rated significant and strong last year.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion on significant and strong for those 6 projects?
I have no issue with the motion, but the Lindale on 38th Street, Lindale to Park, I believe that the description when you get into it says Blaisdell to Park. So I don't know which is the real answer, but I think the city went through and cut that project short. So I think the name is wrong. At any rate, if it's not the name is wrong, the description is wrong, and it says Blaisdell to Park.
So Scott, we're pulling it up on the screen right now. The title is Lindale to Park. Neil, can you scroll down to the map?
Yep.
This map looks like. You build it up a little bit. So yeah, you're right, Scott. The map shows Blaisdell to Park, not Lindale to Park. I don't think it changes how we rate it, but it might be.
It doesn't.
But
yeah.
it's a fair point, and we should probably get some clarification from Public Works on this. And if nothing else, point out that it would be nice if there was a little bit better attention to detail with these projects. Excuse me, with these CBRs. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm putting it in the click inquiries spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
175 is this.
Sorry.
175 has the same problem. Similar problem.
Yeah, and is it now is it matching? Oh no, yeah. So the title doesn't match the map.
Right.
Let's just take a quick look. Can you go down to the map, Neil? So this is now 10th Avenue to 2nd Avenue. Instead of, sorry, what was the title again?
23rd.
Or yeah, 10th Avenue to 23rd. Neil, can you scroll up to the title? Yeah, so they cut off a couple of blocks. It says Park Avenue to 23rd, so same issue. Again, I don't think that impacts the way we want to rate these, but it's something we should get clarified and ask for better attention to detail next year. Anything else on this motion? Just to remind everybody, we're talking about 169 through 178, rated significant strong is the motion on the floor. There's no further discussion. Use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. None, that passes unanimously. Okay, let's do PV 179. That's 7th Street North from 10th Street North to Lindale Avenue North, rated significant strong last year.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that one? Significant strong for 179. Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. That passes. Okay, now we've got 4 new paving projects. So I'm going to ask Neil to bring up PV 180 to start and read the description for everybody's benefit.
So PV 180, Loring Greenway. Project description. This project will make capital improvements within the public right-of-way along the Loring Greenway, which connects Nicollet Mall to Loring Park via a series of open spaces and paths. Public Works will address aging and deteriorating paths, walls, seating areas, lighting, signage, and other various public realm infrastructure, including upgrading the right-of-way to meet current ADA design standards. And for the financing part, it's $500,000 in 2028. And those are paid with bonds.
So I'll entertain a motion on PV 180.
Move significant strong.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on significant and strong for PV 180, Loring Greenway? None. Please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. That passes. That's significant and strong. All right, PV 181 is next, Neil.
PV 181, 18th Avenue South, EM Stately Street, and then what's Gemma Place. Project description. The proposed project will reconfigure approximately 0.24 miles of 18th Avenue South between East 24th and East 26th Streets, and 0.36 miles of Gemma Place and EM Stately Street between Cedar Avenue. Currently, the 18th Avenue South Quarter segment includes sidewalks on both sides of the street, a one-way traffic lane, and 2 parking lanes. The area along the project corridor includes a range of residential densities, including the Little Earth Housing and Urban Development subsidized housing complex on the northern portion of the segment, as well as institutions such as daycares, places of worship, and Cedar Field Park. Gemma Place and EM Stately Street include a mix of existing sidewalks and gaps, one-way and two-way traffic, and 2 parking lanes. The area along the segment of the project corridor includes a range of residential densities such as an urban farm and vacant lots. This project will build upon community visioning and engagement that was started in 2021. This included a transportation study and the deployment of a demonstration project to interactively engage with residents and explore more permanent solutions to address ongoing concerns related to public safety, traffic, livability, and equity. This project will help improve traffic safety for people walking, rolling, biking, and driving, and will explore green stormwater infrastructure. This area of East Phillips neighborhood is high priority for green infrastructure, especially trees and enhanced vegetation. It is designated as the Southside Green Zone, a place-based policy initiative aimed at improving health of low-income Indigenous communities of color, which are overburdened by environmental conditions such as traffic and other pollutants. The study will include a summary of recommendations that will inform future budget requests. And then it is for $500,000 in 2028 through bonds.
I'll entertain a motion on this one.
Move significant strong.
Second.
So I'll just jump in quick on this one. This is the one that I pointed out to them that I think it's great actually that they're putting a project that's new in the out year, but I think this is one that we might want to consider, if we can make it work from a funding perspective, moving it up. It sounds like they have some more community work to do, but I don't think that means it needs to be 6 years out. It could probably be 2 years out. And, this one just struck me as one that it's a no-brainer from an equity perspective. So why not get it done earlier rather than later? So if you want to put me in for a comment on that one, Katie, or if anybody else wants to do it, I'm happy to let somebody else do it or join me on the co-authoring the comment. With that, is there any further discussion on significant strong for PV 181? Seeing none, if you object to the motion, please use the raise your hand feature. That one passes unanimously. Neil, could you read PV 182, please?
PV 182, Lake at Nicollet reopening. Project description. The proposed project will construct approximately 0.2 miles of Nicollet Avenue between Lake Street and Cecil Newman Lane, as well as reconstruct the Nicollet Avenue Bridge over the Midtown Greenway. Currently, the corridor contains no roadway as it was developed into the old Kmart. In coordination with CPED, Public Works is evaluating the redevelopment potential of the 10-acre site. The project is a reconstruction project involving the entire right-of-way and will include new sidewalks, ADA-compliant pedestrian ramps, bicycle accommodations, pavement, curb and gutter, and utility improvements. The project will also include signal improvements, new signage, and new pavement markings as needed. And this is for $300,000 in 2025. And as noted, that as people in our Q&A session noted, that we're missing one of the revenue sources here, which is, it sounds like assessments. Or sorry, that streetcar value district, I think is what that's what's missing.
So with the caveat that we may need to revisit this, I don't think so, but just in case, we'll leave it open to that once we get that extra information, but let's go ahead and give this a rating now.
Move significant strong.
Second.
I have no objection to that rating. I would just point out that this, I I tried to bring this out in the meeting today. This is an expensive project that they've made look like it's not. I mean, maybe not intentionally, but it's coming off like it's a cheap project, and it's not. And I suspect that my north of $20 million guess is going to be correct. Go ahead, Jeff, and then George.
Thanks, Chair. I know that you don't want too many side comments, but when I rented at 28th and Blaisdell, and I can imagine over the decades how many hours of our fellow residents' lives have been wasted in the transit diversion going around this. So we're basically undoing maybe what is historically a huge mistake of policyholders back in the day to have this bridge and street blocked for private development. And as a shopper at Kmart, when I lived in South Minneapolis, so we're kind of rectifying something that was probably a bad choice with 2020 hindsight. So I think as long as we understand the cost going into it citywide, that I think we should be transparent, and city leaders need to be, and they need to explain the funding sources. So I agree with John in that regard. But I do think going ahead with this significant strong on this, what seems to be further scoping, fully support doing that.
Thanks. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Jeff said, but also I think just let's capture in the notes I'm not sure what additional information they're going to provide or whether they'll actually amend this form, but if not, we should point out the need to understand the overall cost is of paramount importance.
Yeah, no, so please don't misunderstand this is for everybody, misunderstand my comment to be implying that if this is really expensive, we shouldn't do it. I agree wholeheartedly that this is an important project regardless of the price. It just is really bothering me that it's showing up on a CBR at $300,000 when it's in fact something like $20 million, right? I mean, that's outrageous. Even if it's not.
I'm glad we called it out. I agree completely. Yep.
And for a little perspective, this project has been around forever, almost as long as I've been on Click, and for years we gave it really low rankings because the city didn't own the land yet, and it was all sort of a dream because Kmart still occupied the property, so we didn't want to give them any money for this. As a matter of fact, the joke I used to make about this is, attention Kmart shoppers, please look both ways when crossing aisle 5, right? I mean, it was really pretty silly, and now they finally at least own the land and they control this now, unlike the past.
So just a piece of information, I think I made a couple of inquiries about this over the last 2 years, and I don't know if it's the CPED or the Public Works was really resisting coming up with a CBR for this project. So it's a first step, I guess, that they've actually done this, but yeah, it's missing lots of information. So.
Yeah, and just on that topic, I mean, things that fall under CPED are explicitly by statute excluded from what we do. So, but beyond that, yeah, I don't, it doesn't sit well with me when any other part of the city of Minneapolis tries to skirt this process. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say before we vote on significant strong for this project? All right, seeing nothing further. If you object to this project, please use the raise your hand feature in Teams. Seeing none, PV 182 is rated significant and strong. And then the last paving project, Neil, if you'd be willing to read PV 183, please.
PV 183, First Avenue North, Washington to 8th Street. Project description: the proposed project will recondition approximately 0.5 miles of First Avenue North between Washington Avenue and 8th Street North. Currently, the corridor includes 2 travel lanes, standard bike lanes, and on-street parking on each side. The area along the project corridor primarily serves the downtown entertainment industry, including live music venues, restaurants, bars, retail, and a Target center. The project will focus on improving the pedestrian realm by expanding the sidewalks and incorporating safer street crossings. This project involves an entire right-of-way and will include improved sidewalks, ADA-compliant pedestrian ramps, pavement, curb and gutter, and utility improvements. The project will also include signal improvements, new signage, green stormwater infrastructure, and new pavement markings as needed. And this request is for $14.7 million in 2027.
I move significant strong.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on significant and strong for PV 183? Hearing none, please use the.
I'll just say, I plan to make an inquiry, and I wish I had found or noted this earlier, but it says the proposed project will recondition the street, and I don't entirely know what that means.
That's pretty vague language. That could mean a lot of things with them, so I think that would be good to get that clarified.
But that doesn't change my vote on significant strong in general.
Any further discussion on significant strong for PV 183? Seeing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes. All right, we're doing great, you guys. So thank you for everybody's diligence on this. We're going to move to the bridge projects, and that will be it for ratings. And then we'll have, I plan to give you guys back a whole bunch of time, but I want to take a few minutes after we're done with this to just talk about next week. And then if anybody has anything they want to ask or express, we can do that as well. So with bridge projects, let's take BR 101, that's major bridge repair and rehab. BR 127, that's the Nicollet Ave Bridge over Minnehaha Creek, and BR 134, that's Bridge 9 program. Those were all rated significant and strong last year.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on significant and strong for BR 101, BR 127, and BR 134? All right, hearing none, please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. And that passes unanimously. All right. That brings us down to our last two projects. I'm going to take them separately. BR 133 is the Cedar Lake Road bridges over the BNSF Railroad. That was rated important and moderate last year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on important and moderate for BR 133? Go ahead, Katie.
Can anyone remember why we did important moderate last year?
Neil, do you want to bring up 133 for us, please? That might help.
You want to read? You want me to read it too?
Well, sure. Why not?
BR 133, Cedar Lake Road Bridge over BNSF Railroad. Project description: the proposed project will reconstruct approximately 280 feet of Cedar Lake Road Bridge over BNSF between Morgan Avenue South and Cedar Lake Road Bridge over CP Rail and Bassett Creek. Currently, the corridor includes a 142-foot bridge that spans over BNSF Railroad. The approach road includes at grade unprotected bike lanes in both directions, two vehicular lanes and sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. The area along the project corridor includes residential single-family homes, park area owned and operated by the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and BNSF Railway undercrossing. The project is a bridge reconstruction project involving the entire right-of-way and will include bridge replacement, new sidewalks, ADA-compliant pedestrian ramps, bicycle accommodations, pavement, curb and gutter, and utility improvements. The project will also include lighting improvements, new signage, and new pavement markings as needed. And the request is in 2026, it's for $7,047,697. In 2027, it's for $1.6 million.
Can you go back up to the top and just sort of leave the description area on people's screens? And then Dan, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to get into too much conversation about this respecting your decision, but I do find this interesting that its level of need is significant, but the priority is 60 of 60. That given, if you look at the map, there's a very interesting connection here that's going to get made to Bassett Creek Park to Burn Mall Park. And that to me is more than, I think that's significant. So I would move to rate this significant.
All right, let me recognize Jeff and then we'll circle back to see if that's considered friendly. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I think I could live with the amendment. Although I just, a lot of these get lumped together, and if you just compare apples to apples, what is the ADT here, 1,350, whereas on Nicollet Avenue, the average daily traffic is 13,900, so we're talking about a 1/10. I'm sure for the 1,500 people or 2,000 people using this connection, it's critical. But things are relative in the entire infrastructure framework, and so not everything can be critical, not everything can be significant. So I kind of get the why we had this lower rating, and the city's responsible, but it's not, the city doesn't own the infrastructure apparently.
Yeah, that's what I was going to comment on. Is that if you scroll back up, please, Neil, to the description area. This bridge is owned by the railroad, but there's an agreement that the city is responsible for maintenance on it, which begs the question that if and when the bridge needs replacement, is that then on the railroad or is that on the city? It's not clear from the way that's worded, which is which. To me, it's implied that it's not the city, that the city's only responsible for maintenance, which of course, that's an interesting question, right? I mean, if they were going to be, what's the word? Strategically clever, but not very honest about that agreement. They could let the bridge fall into disrepair and say, hey, railroad, time to replace the bridge. So I'm not suggesting that that's what you want to do. But I guess what I'm thinking is that they should make sure that whatever maintenance they're doing to this bridge kind of lines up with the way they address the bridges that they actually own. And they're not doing the opposite and over maintaining this, to the railroad's benefit. We might want to submit some questions about this. Jeff, were you the original motion maker?
No, I was going to second Dan's amendment, though.
So I think Katie, were you the original motion maker on this one, or was it Erica?
I don't think
Might
you
have
did.
been me. I think I did it.
Right, that was you.
I'm fine.
All right. So are you okay?
I'm fine changing it.
Okay. So we're moving this to significant strong.
I thought, did he say significant moderate or not?
Right. Sorry. Yes, you're right. Significant moderate. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, if you object to the motion, please use the raise your hand feature. All right, BR 130.
Question, you had mentioned it's probably worth some inquiries. Who would like to take the lead on that?
If no one else will do it, I'll do it. Dan, if you or somebody else wants to do it, feel free.
I think maybe it's a piece that we could share next week and figure out a course.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to start with some inquiries. If we can get that back by next Wednesday, that could, inform what we want to do next. I could put together an email on that I'll forward to Neil for an answer from the group.
Would you also do me a favor? So if you're gonna email me or like staff about like a question, will you also just park it? I've been trying to circulate them all in that click inquiries document too. But
Okay.
If you have a question, like, can you put it also in there?
Is it just easier if I just put it there and you pull it out of there, or do you want it?
Because that's where I've been referring I've just been referring Public Works to like go to that spreadsheet and then they can see.
And
they can see the deals.
Oh.
The only reason I suggested the other way is that's how we used to do it in the past, but that's fine. That's more efficient. There's no reason to take extra steps.
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right. So for everybody, where we talked about emailing Neil, unless you're uncomfortable doing that or have any technology issues, just do what he suggested, which is go to SharePoint and put it in inquiries, and he'll make sure that people are alerted that there's questions they need to respond to in there.
Yep, exactly.
And just to be clear, Dan, you're wanting to talk about this is in line with changing the recommendation. So I absolutely do not want to cut off any conversation about that. It was just, if we're going to get into a long conversation about comments, I would like to hold off on that till we get through all of these. But I'm not trying to short circuit anything here. If people have things they want to say that relate to how we're rating these right now, then that's absolutely discussion we should be having. All right. Go ahead, Dan.
It was simply about a comment that wasn't regarding the rating. Yeah.
All right, so down to the last one here, BR 135. This is Pillsbury Avenue South over the, what is that, Hennepin County Railroad?
The Greenway.
Gotcha. All right, this was rated significant and moderate last year.
Was that a motion? I'll say second.
No, that was not a motion, unless I didn't hear somebody.
I would move significant strong.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Katie, I'll let you address it and then we can have further discussion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think I mean, I don't know why we said moderate last year, but this is near Carmel Mall. And so anyway, it's heavily utilized, and just if we're thinking about equity issues, I think this would be another one that we want to like make sure that we're addressing city goals. Like this is a way to help address city goals.
There's also a huge building going up right there right now. So when they're done with that construction, they're going to want to fix up the road too.
George, go ahead.
Yeah, I support that. In fact, I lobbied for a higher rating last year. Just ride your bike underneath that bridge, and I'm not a bridge expert, but it's, you know, it looks like it's over 100 years old.
It's 107 years, and
yeah.
Their wording is functionally obsolete.
Yes, yeah. Just go for a bike ride, and you'll agree.
All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. So I know this will be unwelcome comment, but I'll just say from a parochial viewpoint, and having lived in South Minneapolis, you know, what are there, 41 bridges? Was that the number of bridges on the historic Greenway that, you know, we as a city also have to consider what is the total cost for all bridge replacements. We did at one point debate for several years a bridge decommissioning, which I think has now been reversed, and I think it's reconditioned now. But, you know, just from a sense that you heard public works staff say we can't afford to pave everything every year, you know, not exactly what was said, but, you know, there are limits to how much capital improvement funding we have as a city. And so this is just something that the past 20 years we've talked about. A historic corridor that has a bridge nearly every block, and it will be a huge long-term cost. So that's my point.
Okay, any further discussion on this before we vote? George, are you asking to be recognized again, or is your hand? Okay, no, okay. Anybody else want to be recognized? All right, the motion on the floor for BR 135 is significant and strong. Please use the raise your hand feature if you object to the motion. Seeing none, this passes at significant and strong. And with that, we have completed that business. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with that and, again, being very diligent about it. That was great. We did that in an hour, which is maybe a little over an hour, not much. That's pretty good. So next week, we'll be in person with a mask mandate. You'll all be fortunate that you will only have to see a portion of my face. Been told I have a face for radio. So the next week's task is going to be to start diving into comments. And when I say that, what really needs to happen, to the extent that it's possible, if people can get stuff authored between now and then and get it into the SharePoint folder, we'll use that for a jump off spot next week. There's some, maybe I'll talk about it now. There's some logistical, we are being recorded. Is this an official public meeting right now?
It is.
There's a few logistical things I want to talk about. I think I'll actually wait till next week when we're together to go over some of that. things are, for those of you that, well, just everybody's been around. You know, these meetings were not previously recorded before the pandemic. They've always been open to the public, but the reality is the public has never shown up at them. Don't know what's going to happen going forward, but there is a bit of a change to the way we're doing this. They're slightly more formal now that it's one of the effects of the pandemic. So I'll discuss that a little bit at the start of the meeting next week. I think the prep for between now and then is, again, anybody's welcome to make a comment about anything. I'll just reiterate this. I think everybody knows this, but if you want to make an HD comment, you don't need to ask anybody's permission. If you can access the SharePoint, that's the best way to do it, is write the comment and put it in there and let them address it in their subcommittee. And same for our task force. If you've got a comment you'd like to make, stick it, draft it, and put it into the folder, and we'll try to address those next week. This is pretty much what we're going to do for the rest of May. So to the extent that people can get stuff done before our meeting, I think we'll be able to have a more productive meeting. So that would be great. If anybody has any questions about anything or wants to collaborate with somebody else, feel free to communicate with one another offline about that. Or if you want to get through me for whatever reason, you're welcome to do that too. That's not necessary. I'm just offering that if somebody wants to do it that way. I think that's everything I have to say about that. Jeff has his hand up,
Yeah.
and then Dan.
It would be helpful, and because I'm looking and have been working in the SharePoint click inquiries, but I've had difficulty with different devices. So for my iPad, for example, no luck accessing SharePoint. It seems to want to bring me back to my former employer's account, which of course I no longer have. But maybe resending the links to us would be a quick helpful for that transportation SharePoint. And I really like the shared space like Google Docs. So that'll be a step forward. And then, yeah, I think that's good. So I'm glad we were able to get through this so well, but expediently.
So let me, before I recognize Dan, let me just jump in on that. So this is a bit of a change. We're going to try to use the SharePoint this year. I have a few concerns about that we're trying to address. One is, once we have a comment finalized, I'm not suggesting that there would be any intent, but somebody could unintentionally make changes to a comment that's been finalized. So I'm talking with Neil about how we're going to address that. We'll figure out something on that. So we're asking everybody to try to use the SharePoint. If for some reason technology does not allow you to do that, please contact Neil or me, and we'll figure out a way to make sure that you're included. I don't want anybody to feel like they can't participate because they can't access that stuff. But let's try to use that.
Would you like to just navigate, like show us the navigation that you have set up in the folder structure?
So before you do that, let's do that. But let me just recognize Dan, and then Neil can do that.
Okay.
I think if you just do your navigation, it might solve my question.
Perfect. Go ahead, Neil.
All right. Okay, so we're in the Transportation Task Force subfolder in 2022. We have this main Excel document where you guys can just track the progress of each comment and who's working on them. Project topic, the lead, contributors, and then the status I think will be very important. So please just like write in progress if you're still working on it. And then when it's done, please write that you're done with it. And then for the actual comment space that I was hoping to have everyone go into would be in here in the transportation comments for possible inclusion. So this is where you can list, again, your project, your lead and contributors, and then the comment you're drafting. I think it probably is wise just to have another column off to the side here that says, there we go, in progress or complete.
Yeah, that'll help us with when we're in the meeting too, to just say that it's approved or not as well.
So yeah, so then we have that, and then so separately, I think I was trying to set up a separate space where this final master document would hold like the absolute completed comments. And I'm still trying to work on some of the permissions but I think I ran into a few issues yesterday. I don't know, Katie, if you had a chance to try to go into the other folder, but I think I've locked everyone out. I think only the chair and vice chairs have access to this file. If I did it right, it's very possible I did not.
Neil, can I just ask you for everybody's
Yeah.
benefit to go out to where people will come into the homepage of SharePoint and then slowly click through so they can see how to navigate to where you were?
All right, so here's your main space. If you come down to this like documents little subfolder down here, you can go to Transportation Task Force, and then there's a list of years, and then you go to 2022, and then you'll have all those documents right there.
Thank you. Okay, with that, Dan, go ahead.
Okay, I think what I understand that I'm supposed to do is to make the comment and put it into your document that's about possible inclusion. Is that correct?
That's where I draft like the full, like the language of it, yeah. And then
Okay.
the spreadsheet itself is for where you're tracking like the
Yeah.
status of it and who you're working on it with.
So I can write it and copy and paste it in there, and we can go from there and figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can either author it right in there, or you just paste it when you're done.
Yeah, and then just one side comment to this: the department comments back to click questions, which you had emailed. Is that someplace in this thing? I couldn't find it in the I couldn't find it anyway.
Okay, so you're talking about the click inquiries?
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So if you're in here on the main page, if there's just this quick links section, there's click inquiries off to the side here.
Okay.
If you come into here, it's just a spreadsheet, and
There you
there's
go.
there's last year's questions and then this year's questions. So this is where people have been responding.
Yep.
So I see, yep, it looks like we have a list of questions here. So yeah, I would just keep adding stuff, adding your questions here, and then I'm just directing the different submitting agencies to respond in here.
Super. And that's where, instead of emailing you directly, that's where you would like us to put them.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you, I mean, I'm trying to limit how many questions that go to submitting agencies, but like if you are asking a question to the submitting agency, I would like also prefer that you'd put it here. And then if you get a side answer from them, like also CC me, or, you know, I just want to make sure we all have access to the same information.
Okay.
So if we can kind of collectively try to put it all in this this document, I'd really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Katie.
Neil, a quick response to your email. I am not able to access the HD master comments, but I am able to access the transportation one.
Okay, so I think at this point, I think John and Katie, you two have access to that master document, and no one else does. And then I think Eric and Jocelyn are the only ones that have copies or have access to theirs. So like, at least you guys can be like the administrators of those of that document.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns they'd like to raise now?
I can see how to access the, hi, this is George. I can see how to access the inquiries page from the calendar. How do we access the status of the comments? Where?
Scroll down from there.
Yep, so if you come down.
Good, okay, perfect. Okay,
yeah.
great, all right. Good, thank you.
Dan and Katie, are your hands still up, or are you wanting to be
Yes.
recognized again?
Neil, another question for you. So I added the new questions to the inquiries sheet. They're just the 4 or 5 at the bottom that don't have any answers. So can you just run from there and ask Public Works the questions?
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns they'd like to raise?
I have a question. So I think we have multiple dates where we're going to discuss comments.
That's right.
Should we have our, like, I felt like I needed to hear, you know, answers to questions today regarding the ADA and stuff. And, you know, so by Wednesday, would we need to have our comments ready by then, or which comments are we going to start with? Just like go in order, or?
No, any comments you want to write. So if there's a comment you want to write about ADA and you haven't heard back from Public Works yet, you clearly can't do that comment yet. There's no, we're not going to say, sorry, it's too late for that or anything like that. If you feel like you can write it pending what you hear from them, go for it. If you feel like you want to see what they have to say first, then wait. We've got 3 meetings of this stuff. I think I have that correct, right?
Yep. So Wednesday, May 4th, that's work on comments, and then the May 11th meeting, and then we have another May 18th meeting for working on comments.
We've got the next 3 meetings, 2 hours each to work on comments. So all I'm asking is that to the extent anybody's got any comments that they can get written before next Wednesday, it'll make our meeting more efficient. I know some comments won't be ready yet, or there'll be things that come up later that nobody's thought of yet, and that's fine. We'll get to those when we get to those. Whatever people can do now, I'm asking you to do. That's it. Anybody else? Questions or concerns or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you everybody for your time on this today. We'll officially adjourn. And I guess, Neil, do you guys have a target on when the spreadsheet will get distributed to everybody for rating?
Like the full ratings rating
Yeah.
sheet. I guess I have not thought yet, but I
assume sometime next week.
Yeah, and we should connect about what you have in yours. So, but I know it sounds like the other task force is done with theirs entirely, so I think we would be ready to go.
Right.
So,
just a matter of you guys updating the spreadsheet at this point, which will take a little bit, but shouldn't be too bad. Okay, we can figure out offline how I'll get this to you. I can scan it and email it or something like that.
Okay.
Hopefully you can understand my chicken scratch. Anybody else before we close? All right. Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate everybody's. This was a long one today, and I think we were efficient and got everything done, but did so in a thoughtful manner. So again, I really appreciate everybody's cooperation and collaboration around that. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks all.